the show last night.
You ain't got to lie. 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 You ain't got to to
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unified. My name is Eric Desrix-Beltran. The situation going on in Ukraine lies deeply within all our hearts here at Unified. War is a terrible thing, and what's happening to the Ukrainian people must not go unnoticed. We ask you all to take a moment to look into the situation, to read credible resources, to donate, to keep the conversation running, to help whatever way you can, no matter how big or small. We'll be doing our part as well. Though the world outside may look grim, we hope you take these next couple of moments, these next couple of hours, we hope they bring you reprieve as we take you away from the world and into the rift to follow some of these exciting stories that these players are looking to compete in. So, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us, and welcome to Unified Premier League. For the casting desk, I've already introduced myself, Eric Desrix-Beltran. Joining me, my brother-in-arms, the no-nonsense, Dean Rebel Fox Merrick. And Dean, a little bit of a switch up today. We're expecting Bay State versus New Trevor, but today it's going to be Hugh Storm taking on San Diego, University of California, San Diego.
The one thing that you can guarantee about UPL, and especially just League of Legends all the time, is that you can never expect anything to happen the way that it should happen, right? And this is one of the biggest ones, which is that we have a bit of a different lineup from what we were expecting. We had games, we had a bunch of players not be capable of playing this weekend, so we've had to switch things up in terms of what game we ended up going after and watching. But it's a great one nonetheless. It's another great, fantastic collegiate matchup, and it's competition at the top of the table here in the Cloud Division.
Yeah, so let's take a look at what we have coming up here, because we've already had 2 weeks of play. Starting with Hugh Storm, already off to a great start, 2-0 so far, 4-1 when it comes to games. They've bested Aquatic. They've gone to a series of Wildcard Developmental. So they're sitting pretty so far at the early stage of this. University of California, San Diego, however, not the same story. Wins here, losses there. They have a 2-1 against the UONA Dragons, as well as a 2-0 sweep against Supernova Dark Matter, putting them at 3-2 when it comes to series. But Hugh, off to the better start, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh, they're rocking an experimental roster a little bit because they have new players stepping into the backup roster, and they're primarily playing players from that specific lineup, which is the biggest thing about Harrisburg, is that, they have basically two full rosters. One is the entire starting roster. That's the backup, and who they're playing out here is who you would see as their second team primarily, which is just, it's more reps trying to make sure that this team is prepared for what is, the end of the collegiate season into the beginning of collegiate playoffs, that kind of thing. And you think that how valuable this is going to be not only for them, but also for San Diego, another team that's right on the precipice, actually, of that collegiate playoff title. I know we're inside of amateur, but for some reason, the collegiate takeover continues to just envelop everything, as all we talk about is collegiate teams here and there every once in a while.
Right, especially with the UPL. But, I mean, that's part of the way the pathways have really worked out here. You do build your way up through the UPL to get into stuff like Proving Grounds. This is the place to develop, to really work out a lot of those issues your team might have, or work out that development,
It is. It's a fantastic place for experimentation and also being able to test against really talented players that are coming together in less kind of will be. I guess collective setups. Normally, when it comes to collegiate, you have coaches, you have some structure, you have consistent play, you have scrim blocks, things like that. You don't always get that from players that are walking into series for the first time from amateur. And so it's always a pretty big thing to be able to watch that unfold in front of us. Here, we actually get two teams who have been capable of doing that ahead of time, as well as we're going to step into the draft. A lot of exciting things on both sides of this, but the player that I want to talk about the most from the side of UCSD, which I know neither of us is super familiar, but I keep tabs on pretty much everybody. If you could name a team in collegiate, I probably know someone from the team. LTD, Lemon Tart Dreamer, is an absolute correct stud in the mid lane position, Desrex. You're going to be screaming that name, and I guarantee you're shortening it to LTD because you can't say all of those syllables that many times.
Try me. Give it a shot. Lemon Tart Dreamer, Lemon Tart Dreamer, Lemon Tart Dreamer. I'm going to say it over and over and over. Don't you doubt me, Rebel. By the way, I just want to take a moment to say fantastic background. I just caught on with the... I was trying to figure out what was behind you. I guess you're the Meep now, right? Bard's collecting you?
I suppose that is the case, yes. I am the alien Meep for Mr. Astronaut Bard. It's a fantastic skin. Bard is the only champion. I don't know if you have one of these champions. Do you have a champion that you just have all the skins for? Because Bard is mine, and then I also have Kha'Zix, who I have all the skins for no reason, because I don't play much Kha'Zix, but...
personally, mine is going to be Trundle. I got all his skins early, and then they never release skins again, so... one out on the easy one there. Good stuff here as we start watching out what's going on with the draft. So far, just going to be an Eve ban and Gwen ban. Interesting to see the Eve ban. I'm curious on the side of University of San Diego. I know you're waiting to rip into this one, Dean.
I made a joke about Lementar Dreamer obviously being very talented, but the mid jungle are the two people that I see consistently on those stat lines going crazy for the side of UCSD. I don't get to see a bunch of VODs of them. The ones I have mostly been stomps one direction or the other. But from what I can tell, Optimizer is incredibly well versed on some of the carry junglers, and the Eve is one of the best performers. The other one I'm actually keeping my eye on is actually the Diana Yasuo, because again, that combination for these two, not only does it seem to fit what Optimizer likes to do, but it's a champion kind of preference for Lementar Dreamer as well. So, and that got banned from them a number of times in a number of series throughout all of Collegiate, so it wouldn't be shocking to me to see them bust that one out. But if you're wondering why this kind of very selective Evelynn pick being taken off the board, Optimizer might be a little bit studious in terms of the ways of Malice.
Yeah. I'm looking around at some of the champions that he's played so far in the UPL, and this is a very diverse champion pool with a lot of styles. The engagers such as the J4 and the Zac, well, you will go Assassin as well. The Eve, you talked about it a moment ago, was played against the Supernova series. There's a Kiana in that one as well. These are spicy picks, man.
There's some mean stuff between a number of the pool here on the side of San Diego, which is why I think it's at some extent moot to talk about what this team's going to pull out, because we don't have the most on them. We haven't had the chance to watch through every single VOD, and we know a little bit about the players, but more specifically, Harrisburg have players that also are capable of doing the same thing. And one of the biggest champions that has now been left through is the Gangplank. It is Lawrence in the top lane yet again. He has been proving time and time again how he's been able to flex around pretty much any opponent you throw across from him, even back when he was in C9 playing for the academy team. And the Gangplank is like the crux of what he was capable to accomplish in carry versus carry matchups. I know they're not going to prioritize it early, but it's something to keep in mind as the draft takes on.
Yeah, so going through the bans real quick, Akshan and Zeri bound away over on the side of Hugh as Tridamir and Karma get taken away for San Diego. First pick going to come out, blue side, going straight for the marksman role. They're going to get that long range, going to get that safety, going to get the Caitlyn. Response from UCSD is Ziggs.
Just immediate wave clear, watching up against what the Caitlyn is going to bring to the table, right? When you have to suffer against this long-range poke, high wave clear, early game ADC, sometimes you just need to strike back. Sometimes you have to say, you know what, you're going to make me suffer, I'm going to make us suffer, and play Ziggs and just stomach it for the bottom lane, because now no one gets to have fun. All the waves are gone, all you're doing is fighting for tower plates. Now it's going to force junglers into the bottom lane, otherwise it's just going to be a pushing battle back and forth.
Just a battle of the tower plates. No one gets to play League of Legends. No one gets to have fun. Maybe we'll get a good Nautilus hook in. But speaking of fun, we're getting a little bit of a long range action here. Could go either into the mid lane role or the support role. Most likely looking for that support role as the Kiana is already being hovered once again.
That is a great one here for Harrisburg, as not only a stag for themselves, whether it's going to be shorter ace or Em's playing that one. It does end up being the Lee Sin, which is unfortunate. I was excited to see shorter ace take that one for himself, but it is also a potential takeaway. They're kind of poking at the fun of Optimizer and LTD in the mid lane, both playing that champion to some avail. And Optimizer is potentially going back towards that. The Kiana, I'm sure that's more of our producer doing that than anything else, but we'll see whether or not they actually decide to go for something like that, because it does fit the wheelhouse of multiple players. My biggest problem, neglecting the Nocturne that currently sits on our screen, is just that they have drafted Ziggs, but then they go with a melee engaged support. That to me tells me that they want to attack towards bottom side, because if they don't do that, all of a sudden Caitlyn Lux is just going to run the Nautilus out of the laning phase.
And this has some interesting interactions. Whenever I see the Paranoia, I'm always thinking about how it's working with other Champions kits. You have a lot of long range on the side of Hugh. When the Paranoia comes out, it's going to be hard to figure out where to place that final spark, where to get the ace in the hole in. You're going to have to just play back, as Nocturne is going to engage in you. But that's the thing. It can be used as an engage. It can be used as a counter engage. Paranoia can be used to just hide the map while you go do some shenanigans elsewhere, maybe take a cheeky dragon or two. There's lots of ways you can really use it into this composition.
While the champion itself has a bunch of fantastic uses, I love the way that you were able to describe the ways that the Nocturne ultimate is going to be proper. I think it actually loses a little bit of steam, because in weeks prior we saw that Harrisburg was running Xyle, and Xyle has a tendency to get a little complacent even on very early active champions very quickly in the game. So first 5-10 minutes things are going to be quiet, and that's the time where Nocturne gets to the point where you hit the level 6, you start hitting first item and things get exciting. But this is shorter ace and he's on the Lee Sin. I have a lot more faith that shorter ace is going to pick up the tempo, start picking up the pace, and really put the pressure down onto Optimizer, cause the rest of the team to have to play around the Nocturne just a little bit.
All right, so taking a look at the bans that came out in the second phase, Graves getting taken away, Rives on the other side. Hover coming in now as Jace selected for UCSD. Lots of top lane bans coming in, lots of solo lane bans coming in from both of these squads as we head into the second phase of the draft as the bot lane already picked up. So the response,
Wow.
Jace being locked in, hovering onto the Malphite. This is it's pretty old school from Hugh if they do go for a lock-in.
Really is true. The fact that they're going for double poke here on the side of SD, they already locked the Malphite as the potential counter into Onyx just to make sure that's going to come through. And Harrisburg, if they round things out with an Orianna, actually makes a really well-cut composition. You're not super worried about either solo lane. You have a very active jungler, and you have a powerful bottom lane to play around. You have really powerful pieces and a pretty straightforward way of playing this out. Your team fight is strong. You play to your bottom side and your ADC. It's very standard League of Legends. Lemon Tart Dreamer has to come up with a response of some kind. The Silas is something that he's played previously. I can't talk enough about what I've seen from LTD in the recent days. Any champion he's willing to take into this, I have full faith in. He's, I think, right now in the top 3, if not number 1, inside of the Western division of Collegiate League of Legends in terms of damage share as a mid laner. It is absurd how much they're able to put into this guy to be able to do damage in the team. But when you have a Malphite ultimate across from you, when you've got a Lux ultimate across from you, you have some big potential game changers that the Silas is going to be able to snag up.
And I'm looking at the side of Hugh, and I'm sorry, I got to detract it for a second. This is the most Season 1 composition I've seen in a very long time. I've never seen so many champions locked in that, have, what, like 2011 as their release date?
It is a throwback for sure, and not only that, it's also super basic. You think about the way that League of Legends has developed for like 10 years, and this is like put ball on Malphite press R, rest of team throw damage, game's over, right? Like that's everything that this composition is intended to do. And yes, there's some more nuance to it, but ultimately, again, it's a very straightforward composition for Harrisburg, which bodes pretty well because it lets these players kind of stand out on their own. Mikhail had great performances. Shorter Ace is an absolute stud in the right situation. Lawrence had a ton of good play. We talked about him plenty. And so the expectations of a team with a simple composition is how do they execute it in more complex ways. They're putting more faith into their players to be able to do a lot more of that intricate kind of detail work.
There's a lot of creative ways to get about this. Like, you have the ball delivery system with the Malphite, of course, but keep in mind, you can use the Lee Sin to be a ball delivery system if he's able to land a Sonic Wave on the right target. As we do look over towards the side of University of San Diego, I do start to question where their win condition is really going to come from. They do have a rough time working out a lot of these lanes that they're going to have to get through once they get to the towards the mid game. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of this is going to hinge on the lanes for them.
It will, and specifically, I think it's a question of do they want to play into mid lane and attempt to play out a situation where it's like, okay, Jason Ziggspoke is strong enough to put Orianna and Lux and Caitlyn and even Lee Sin on a pretty low health bar to where then all of a sudden, like Optimizer, LTD, they get to run into this composition and start to clean up kills. The other way of playing this, which is how I expect UT or UCSD to actually walk into this game, is you play towards Lemon Tart Dreamer with Unless and with Optimizer to the best of your abilities. You break this Silas out of the laning phase and you start attacking for the side lanes. You prevent the Caitlyn from going ahead by getting the Ziggs broken out. You start playing into the Jace and making sure the gold is there so that the Malphite isn't just this big stone wall, not only figuratively but also literally for the poor Jace on the top side. And all of a sudden this damage starts to stockpile for the side of UCSD. The team fight becomes harder. It really comes all about how the ultimates tag from the side of Harrisburg, and it gives so much more counterplay for the squad.
Man, those ultimates are going to be fun to watch. I want to see if they are going to get any of those wombo combos, because this composition of Harrisburg, especially when we start fighting around those neutral objectives, around Baron Pit, around Dragon Pit, where the bodies start clumping up, those are going to be some of the most dangerous times for UCSD to handle.
Those are also the times where it's the hardest to play out because it is the easiest time for Harrisburg to try to find an engagement. But those are also kind of the make or break moments for UCSD. It's so easy for a Silas or a Nocturne to completely change a great game when you know that an enemy team is going to be stacked around an objective and you can find a cool flank angle or you can make a massive play on your own right. It's the place where it feels like the most individual kind of action can make an impact across a game. And so maybe they can count on that. Maybe they can. I'm having my doubts about this. Harrisburg is an incredibly talented team. UCSD, they're currently sitting at 4-1, but they haven't qualified for playoffs quite yet. So I know that's got to be weighing on their minds. They play tomorrow to be able to qualify for that. So that's an exciting little bit of information about Collegiate tomorrow that I get to keep talking about until the game actually kicks off, because that's what I do. So.
Of course, you're the collegiate resident here, Rebel Fox. You always give us
collegiate too. You're also collegiate resident.
Yeah, okay. I'm just barely joining your world though, with the whole mace and everything.
You are the ground that my world was built upon, my friend. It is the work you did set the foundation for the work the rest of us did. In the same way that Harrisburg has actually set a lot of the ways that a bunch of collegiate teams have been able to develop. You talk about the resurgence of what these teams have been showing up in amateur to do, and how many of these teams, a year ago, 2 years ago in amateur, it was Maryville, and they were like top 4. Sometimes they weren't actually, achieving those results. And now all of a sudden you have like Winthrop is popping off, Bay State's making it, Illinois State's making noise. You have all these teams that are like going in and trying their hand in amateur and becoming better teams because of it, which is nice.
When you talk about some of those names, it just puts a smile on my face. Especially when you just talk about ISU right now and how close they were in their last series that they played this Monday. But, oh, look at this. Going forward. Looking to get the hook in onto Loop. But Unless is getting really punished here. Going to use the dredge line to try and get away. A flash forward coming up. Makel waiting for the auto. Can't finish the job. The first blood barely picked up. Makel throwing over a Piltover Peacemaker into Disrespectful. A double kill to start off you.
And it's really, really strange because right there it looked to me like UCSD, they actually thought they were in a very winning scenario on the bottom side. But Nautilus is not a tanky champion when you don't have Aftershock. You go Glacial, yes, you deny some damage, but that was Unless getting so, just blatantly aggressive, soaking a bunch of damage on the front end of that fight that the two range champions were able to follow up. And Ziggs doesn't have consistent damage like an ADC, so the back end damage wasn't there. Once the chunk was on Mikhail, 30%. That looks nice. It looks close, but that was all they had to pour into that situation. And now you're down 3 of your summoners. You're down a fair amount of everything else that has come about. It's a rough place to be. It's not where you wanted to start if you're this bottom side.
Unless is going to try and make the best of a bad situation, using that respawn to at least pivot out and get some information on where Shorter Ace will be pathing. That little pixel brush, spotting out that pathing indeed. They obviously knew he was going to go for bottom scuttle, but look at this, Limitar Dreamer jumping right onto Emps. Good chunk of damage, 200 health left on Emps, but here comes the return from Shorter Ace. Rough spot to be, buddy. You're not escaping this one. Emps with one more auto gets the kill.
Shorter Ace didn't even get an assist right there. It was just his presence causing a little bit of back and forth. It was Lemon Tart Dreamer trying to outplay the Lee Sin gank before he realized he was just getting auto-attacked to death by Emps, unfortunately. A position that was... He had flash there. He had to know he was in a pretty dire strait. I think he was waiting for the Q to come out to flash it before anything else, just not realizing the damage was going to be there. You could see the attempt, but it's not going to be the case. It's topside, more action.
A flash right onto Axe. Going forward is Shorter Ace. Finishes up the kill, but it's a 1-for-1. Both junglers getting kills here. The better one will be Shorter Ace. Doesn't need any sight to see. Nocturne might block that away, but he still brings the pain to Optimizer, getting 2 kills over in that top lane trade.
This team from the side of UCSD are getting way more active than I thought they were going to be, which is, normally that sounds like a compliment, but in this game, I don't think I can call it a compliment, unfortunately, Eric. It's a position where you're playing into double range bot lane, and you're playing into like the Mal fight at the beginning of the game, and you're going in with a Nocturne against a Lee Sin at the early levels, and you're playing aggressively as the Silas. That's the one place I could get behind it, right? I'm okay with LTD getting aggressive into imps and just being punished off the back of the gank, but it's not a place where all these lanes need to be aggressing this hard. They've already given up a 2k lead. I'd like to see them settle a little bit more, wait for the level 6, start playing around big strength and ultimate points before anything else.
I mean, 2k lead this early. Gold going on to Makel and Shorter Ace. Shorter Ace early game Lee Sin, get that early game damage going. Like that's hell to have to deal with when Lee Sin gets fed early, because if you're Optimizer, you start getting paranoid about your own jungle and you're the one playing the Nocturne.
Ooh.
Nice
he finds a bit of chain, yeah. He's got some tricks up his sleeve as the Silas, but unfortunately being down 16 CS, that's like 2.5 full waves at the beginning of the game too. It's like there's like your screen, if you take away the scoreboard, you're like, okay, this game doesn't look horrible, but you look at the scoreboard, you look at the gold, and you're like, okay, wait, this is actually horrible.
Oh, going after Makel, getting the punish there. Nice out of Unless, but Loop will not get the return kill. Nice flash coming out of Disrespectful. Loop forced to just walk away. Damn shame that trade went down, but still Shorter Ace will take advantage of the distraction and grab a Drake.
Yeah, able to capitalize on the Nautilus engagement. Again, kind of leveraging the double. Oh, actually, mid lane, there's some more action. There's action everywhere.
Wow, flashed out before the shockwave went off. Now Light Binding makes it too easy for Shorter Ace to land that Resonating Strike. Another kill into the bot lane. This is becoming bloody now. 6-2, 6 minutes in.
I can sympathize with what I just saw, unfortunately, from Endless, because you look at this bottom wave, and it's slowly actually pushing out from Unless and Disrespectful into the Caitlyn and Lux. And that's not where you want your wave. Like, you don't want it there, because they're able to catch it, and then they can make a forcing move and just shove it all the way back in, or they could just freeze it and keep the Ziggs in a position where it's like, okay, all of a sudden Lux gets to roam about on the map all they want. And so there's this really weird back and forth where Unless is like, I need to fix the wave, but I'm pretty sure Lee Sin's on bottom side. What do I do? And so he steps up a little bit too far, kind of contemplating his options, and unfortunately gets punished for it. And the mid lane didn't get to capitalize either. So it's Harrisburg. They understand what they want to do, and they're doing it. And UCSD is sitting here, and they're like, okay, here's our idea. And it doesn't work, and nothing is slowing down Harrisburg at the moment.
All right. Dean.
Yeah.
Let's go with this then. Optimizer, level 6 now, has Paranoia available.
True.
What do you think is the lane he should pop up for here? What do you think is going to give the most success? Is it going to be Lemon Tart Dreamer? Is it trying to take down that Emps as Flash is already down on the Orianna? It could be a lane to go after if you could get the lockdown.
I think you have laid out the perfect opportunity with Lemon Tart Dreamer. I would have probably said Orianna even if the Flash were available, but that's because I have a firm belief in his ability to do damage, but I also have a firm belief in, like, first off, the Silas is really important to the comp. It's one of your big team fighters. It's one of your big scalers. Like, there's a lot that this brings to the rest of the composition. You could shut down what happens with Harrisburg's big Wombo combo team fight. Like, there's so many tools in late here. And not only that, it's also probably the easiest, right? Like, bottom lane's not easy. It's Caitlyn Lux. They're constantly having a shoving wave. They're constantly being able to trade. They're sitting so far back if they want to play defensively. And then top lane's a Malphite. Like, you go in on a Malphite, he presses ultimate to get away. He's full armor. You're not killing him. It's not going to happen. Orianna seems to be the most logical target.
But the movement coming out of Emps was pristine in those last little bits there. Playing towards the Rift side meant that Optimizer was not in range to actually pop a Paranoia. And then with the movements of Lemon Tart, read that the Nocturne was there, moves over and just steals out, gets some vision over there, over where Optimizer's Raptor camp is. So being smarter to it, being the wiser to it, knowing where his jungler is and playing towards that side.
Ooh.
Ooh, nice hook out of Unless. There comes the bomb, looking to get a return of damage as the light binding, loosen singularity onto Disrespectful. It can't be popped because already dead. But look at the minion wave do work on Makel. That's not where you want to be in this 1v1 trade. We'll have to cut it off with the vision of the brush as the bomb lands flush. Trying to survive is going to be Makel, trying to buy time for Shorter Ace to get there. A couple more autos goes through, Pills over Peaksmaker's not going to land.
No.
Shorter Ace is getting there in time. A couple more minions. Oh, there's Ace in the hole. Disrespectful. What a way to go down.
Oh, it's so tragic. Disrespectful just wanted to hit one more Q and Makel. He just denies him permanent vision. He's all over that brush, and it gets enough time for Shorter Ace to show up. More importantly for the Caitlyn, the Ace in the hole to come back up and to win the 2v2 fight. You can say a lot of things about what happened in that situation, but you cannot call it boring, because that was some of the most interesting gameplay I've seen between a Ziggs-Caitlyn combination.
So sad, but too bad. Disrespectful goes down. Second death of the game, but this is putting Makel in such prime positioning. 9 minutes in, he's finished his Gale Force, already working towards that second item.
It's they haven't even had to put effort into Makel to get him ahead in this game for Makel to go crazy. Like, and this is a byproduct of not only the bottom lane being in the situation that it is, but also it's just, again, Makel is a very talented player. It came over from elsewhere, was able to kind of join the team in a new situation where, like, every season it seems like Harrisburg brings in like a superstar ADC, and Makel happens to be that ADC this year. And you don't get to see much tape on him before they get to come in, and then all of a sudden UPL happens and you see Harrisburg bring out this ADC, and you're like, wow, this ADC is kind of cracked. And that's exactly what Makel has been for the majority of the tournament.
And now trying to focus onto Makel. Gonna land a hook onto him. Brilliant chain coming in. Gets the shutdown going onto Optimizer. UPK forced to just walk away after his marksman goes down. Trade going on. Shockwave gets flashed away. Return to fire coming out of Lemon Tart, but gets away from the Shockwave. Shorter Ace will take down Angst, and a flash forward from Emps finds the kill onto Lemon Tart Dreamer.
Man, just plays all over the place. A fantastic one-on-one for Emps in the mid lane. Both of them missing the shockwave. Hysterical to me for whatever reason that might be. But again, it's Harrisburg who are finding the better of just about every single play. The Jace getting put down. The bottom lane of the losing situation. LTD getting brought down in the one-on-one in the mid lane. It's just all of these kind of dominoes that have been set up for UCSD to try to win a game. And they're falling down one by one by one, slowly tipping over as the entire track is just going to keep going. As Harrisburg's tough to slow down. Like, you have a powerful Lee Sin that will command in the mid game. You got a powerful team fight to work with, and your Caitlyn is this just insane member of this team to be able to work with as well.
Ooh, nice hook coming out from Unless. Sets up an easy kill for Disrespectful. One desperately needed at this stage of the lane, but it is a pickup of a Drake going over to UCSD.
It was a solid little tempo play, actually, right there from UCSD. They had lost so much in one swift movement from Harrisburg that all the members backed at exactly the same time, and they're like, okay, this is low-key illegal, so they just run out to Dragon. They get a pick off just off the back of, again, the Nautilus hook somehow. Unless has been able to make a very high value of that one ability from the Nautilus, and snagging the Dragon does slow down the game a little bit more. Again, I don't know whether they want to take this late against a composition that has a Wombo combo, but at minimum, they're not losing the game fast. Right? Like, you can keep that in your back pocket, I guess.
At least, you know, we take those. We take any silver linings we can get here, Dean. And Shelly now coming into the mid lane as Unless kind of stalks around here. Just going to pop that Hex Flash over the wall. Not going to risk anything else, but gets caught out by Lou PK. While the rest of the squad, out comes the bomb, but the paranoia for the re-engage of Optimizer goes after Lou PK, gets the fear on, now putting his attention towards Emps. Emps gets off a shockwave, tries to back up, going forward. His Optimizer wants to finish off that kill, wants to get that shutdown, but now Shorter Ace wants him, and he might have bitten off more than he can chew. Lemon Tart Dreamer takes his own ultimate and finishes him off with it.
And no kill on the top side either. They're going to be able to counter push mid lane. UCSD, they've turned out the gold lead. You'd think the way that this game has actually been playing out. Earlier, I had talked about how the gold lead and the scoreboard weren't indicative of how the game was looking. That's still the case. 11 kills and what you've seen from Harrisburg, it's not indicative of the gold. They're tied right now. This last play is actually going to determine quite a bit more as well in the back pocket of UCSD, and they're turning things around slowly. I love that gold graph usage because you can see just the kind of lead Harrisburg was able to command. Is slowly going to try to build it over time, and all of a sudden, all at once, everything came back up. The domino track is something must have tipped the wrong direction because they slowly stopped going the right way.
A lot of this is just no real frontline. No one can really soak the damage that UCSD are bringing in some of these early game skirmishes. You know, you don't have your Malphite there yet. Lawrence is still up there dealing with angst for the entire time. So anyone they choose is a victim, and another victim of Optimizer, unfortunately, will be Lou PK, picked up in the river.
And it took a minute for the Nocturne to really find its bearings inside of this game, even after the first ultimate. Wasn't able to do all that much, but slowly Optimizer has become the #1 gold recipient in the game. Being able to apply this to get, I think, Disrespectful LTD or Onx back into the game is far more impactful than continuing to develop it yourself. But one way or another, there are weapons to use here from the side of UCSD. You can appreciate that at least. This is a team that, they're the only team so far inside of the Western Division that took a game off of Arizona State. Arizona State is competing against UCI for the #1 seed inside of the Western Conference tomorrow. So this is it speaks to their level.
Oh, that was clean. Everything layered beautifully, but now jumping in is Optimizer. Not sure if he wants to challenge this. He's trying to buy time for Lemon Tart Dreamer to get there. Gets there fast enough. Unstoppable Force comes in, stealing away the ultimate from Angst. Out comes the light binding, but pushed back in by Unless. Depth charge will land onto Shorter Ace, excuse me. Another fear tether, but the safeguard gets him to break the tether. He's underneath the tower, dealing with 3. A double kill coming out from Optimizer. A little bit of attention. Emps gets that mid lane tower, but the play successful for UCSD in the top lane.
They play back to topside because they're attempting to keep the Jace shut out of the game completely, which is, it makes some sense, right? Like that's ideal. You're shutting out gold, making sure the items aren't going to come through. The Jace is going to shut out for way too late in the game. Your Caitlyn's never going to be under threat. But the response is amazing. Optimizer doesn't even block the Q that came out from Malphite. He actually waited on the spell shield to block out the Q from Lee Sin to prevent this. Now, Disrespectful is going to feel the brunt of this force, unfortunately, because they lean too many members into topside. The wave is roughly clear, though. Mikhail's not going to suffer for that one.
Easy. Easy peasy. I mean, no flash available Not much you could really do when the minion wave's there, just trying to clear it up. A double light binding out of Blue PK onto Unless and Angst will get him away, will get him to safety. 30 seconds until Drake is going to spawn as we are 16 minutes into this game. So far, pretty strong comeback from UCSD as they're able to close that gold lead, just getting it to 1K, the difference.
And the farm difference from mid lane means a fair amount in terms of the gold difference that happens in a game like this. Both junglers are kind of going crazy in the kill department, even though Optimizer is ahead of gold right now. It's a question mark of the bottom lane, though. Disrespectful is so far down from the Caitlyn. The Ziggs is going to have value. You have a very long range to work with as the Ziggs, and you've got the Leanderies for a bit more tick damage, but it is at least concerning that you're down this much. Mikhail is such an important piece of the consistent damage of the team fight for Harrisburg. They've got this wombo combo, but the Caitlyn being powerful is so much just as important as having that combo all together in the same place.
Ooh, this is going to be really tough to get the steal. They're still going for it, though, and trying to find the engage. It's very split. Disrespectful gets over the wall, but Unless is punished. Light goes out. The final spark onto Lawrence. He will survive. Shockwave onto 3. A hard punish trying to return fire, but Mako flashes too fast, and the damage is too big from Hugh Storm as they take down 3 and send Angst and Disrespectful running for the hills. Shorter Ace will find the flank, will stop their escape. Angst is trying to return fire here. Health bar's low. Mako and Emps have to walk away. Sonic Wave lands onto Disrespectful. Follows through. Nope. Goes for the safeguard. Not going to challenge it. They're not going to go for it. Don't feel confident in that play.
That is a respectful move from Harrisburg Storm that was forced from the side of Angst and from Disrespectful. These are the 2 lowest gold numbers on this team in terms of the damage that had come through, and yet they're the ones that are putting on pressure. This was actually really gorgeous to me from UC San Diego. I thought it was rough at first. They lost the dragon, but the fact that they almost killed off 2 members in the midst of the pit while their 1 support went into the backline and bought so much time for them was kind of crazy. If they pull one of those kills and the dragon and they can win out that situation, this game looks so different than what it does right now. Because at the moment, you see Harrisburg Storm's up 3K, they're up 2 Dragons, you're thinking like, oh, there's been some cheese kills, but ultimately Harrisburg's winning this game. It doesn't speak to just how competitive San Diego's actually been. Nonetheless, Harrisburg has been able to keep their Caitlyn safe. They've been able to get the composition that they've been working towards off. Emps has been great on the Orianna, which is not things that bode well for the future of this game.
And Dean, I was taking track of a lot of the summoner spells before that last fight. Hugh Storm had every single flash up while UCSD had 0. It was one of those where you just got to give the respect. It's way too much of a risk, and you can see exactly how that folded out. Those flashes were so clutch in avoiding a lot of what UCSD were able to bring in that team fight.
It's a two-way street where it's like, okay, UC San Diego probably shouldn't have had taking a fight like that if they don't have their flashes, they don't have the tools readily available. On the other half of it, it's like, wow, look how close that was. Imagine if they had their flashes up, and it's like, I kind of want to see what a team fight looks like in that situation with their flashes up, because things might have been a lot different. But that's past talk. That's something that you can look back on in VOD review and potentially consider, because in this one right now, it's still Harrisburg always, to me, has this very strange mid-game where they meander for a little too long from their transition into later game in their win condition in that stage. So it's like, in this, it feels like now they're fishing for a fight, and they can fish for a 5-on-5, where it's like, okay, we have Malphite Orianna, we win 5-on-5, so that's fantastic. But in other games where their composition gets more complex, they have problems sometimes kind of identifying what it is that they actually need to accomplish in order to turn a game from like a position where they're at 3K gold lead, 4K gold lead, into a win very quickly, especially in the earlier stages against teams that they probably should take very fast wins against.
Forced to use the Rift Herald in his own jungle, but it will line up towards the mid lane, and a lane that's already low, so this shouldn't be too much of a waste unless it actually does fall within the next couple of seconds. But no, we'll get that charge and we'll destroy that tower. Now, the rest of UCSD, they've been playing this almost like kind of a pseudo pick comp. Once they're able to get someone in isolation, they just all jump on him as fast as possible to get the kill. And we're seeing that unfold right now as they hop straight after Emps, but he goes golden perfectly. Tower's gonna go, Emps is still gonna go, but it looked good, Dean.
I really wanted to see them just switch places, like on each other's shockwaves. But unfortunately, we didn't get the perfect timeline here. Instead, it's just a flood of gold back into the pockets of UC San Diego. They get the Rift Herald charge in the mid lane, they get the tower on topside, and they get a kill into the pockets of their mid-jungle duo yet again. The double codex is confusing to me, LTD, but I can appreciate the plays they've been able to make around him in this game. And the biggest thing is the longer the game goes, the more gold the Jace is going to have, the more gold the Disrespectful is going to have. It bodes really positively to the scaling that those two champions can bring. Because if you can put together team fights with Optimizer and LTD at this point that still look okay, and your damage starts to come into place, Harrisburg, they might struggle. They might have to really focus on making sure that ultimate is going to land the way they want it to. That wombo combo has got to be the crux of their comp.
They basically have to be the one to dictate the engage. If Harrisburg can, yeah, exactly as you said, it's just destruction. It's a death ball. You literally got the shockwave right there. But if UCSD are able to find any sort of vision, able to abuse this fog of war whatsoever, and find someone in isolation, we saw what happened to Emps earlier in the top lane. They will repeat that. They have the damage to find these assassinations, but now it's going to be Hugh Storm with the front foot on Dragon spawning within 7.
They've got all 5 members here from UC San Diego. I think they need to be careful about getting baited into a pure 5-on-5 right now because they don't want Harrisburg to win. But the alternative is they don't want to give up this potential soul point. If they track the Dragon here, I think they actually are really confident with the position they're at in the game. But losing a fight here feels like almost a death blow to the confidence of UC San Diego. I'm curious if they want to play for a fight, if they really want to commit to the Dragon, what's going to happen here. Keep an eye on Optimizer and his ultimate getting into the backline, especially onto Emps. If they get vision of Emps, things could go very poorly very quickly for Harrisburg.
Unstoppable Force used both ways, jumping right onto Emps. Lemon Tart will take him down now. Trying to run away as Maycole puts down the trap. Optimizer sticking to him. Shorter Ace with the safeguard away. Optimizer, will he find the kill onto the marksman? Answer will be yes. Gets a shot down on top of it and drags in the top laner to cash in. Plus a Drake. UCSD coming up big in that last fight.
I'm just baffled altogether. Everything comes true that UC San Diego wants to come true. You talked about it. The instigation of the team fight has to be there for Harrisburg Storm, and they do not pull the trigger. Lawrence cannot find a flash ultimate. They can't get the ball onto him to put into the side of San Diego because they're worried about the counter engage that the Silas and that the Nocturne are able to accomplish. But that just buys them time to make the engagement happen anyway. And all of a sudden, Emps is dead. Yes, Lawrence can ult into the backline, but now you don't have that massive shockwave to throw into everything. And the fight afterwards doesn't go your way either. You get shoved out. Optimizer is too strong right now for Mikhail to just be able to rip through. And you could see, once they shoved out of the fight, every other member just falls down in very quick succession. San Diego have pulled themselves back into the game from what seemed like a really rough position at the beginning. Now they're tied in Dragons. They're up a tiny amount of gold, doesn't really matter. Their composition is still good at team, still rough to play. It's the ease of the team fight from Harrisburg, but this game gets nothing but more exciting.
This is wild. This is definitely wild. UCSD coming back from the grave. Pretty much zombie mode as we head into the mid game of this, focusing their attention towards this top side of the map. The attention will definitely be towards Baron. It's the only neutral objective available. 4 minutes left before that Mountain Drink comes and sets up any potential soul point, but that will be a long time in the wings. Now Lemon Tart focuses his attention onto Lawrence. It's a good chunk of damage onto Lawrence. Gonna try and steal away the Unstoppable Force. Can land it over the wall. Lawrence edging closer to that turret. Gonna go neutral. Anks just happy to pretty much kick him out of lane and be able to free shove this. Now Hugh Storm applying pressure in mid.
Yeah, the lane swap situation that actually occurred from UC San Diego is really intelligent. I don't know if they're rocking a coach. I don't know if they're rocking an analyst. But if anybody made that decision outright on the team, or if somebody communicated this, I have to give them a very quick bravo because, man, throwing the Silas into the lane against the full armor Malphite just makes a ton of sense. The ultimate is superior when it comes to the one-on-one. You combine that with also, Anks all of a sudden doesn't have this like very mean brick wall in front of him. Now he's got Oriana, who doesn't often have the range to be able to make a play on him. Instead, he just gets to catch waves where he needs to, and that means that slowly the Jace gets to recover a little bit from the early game that had been brought upon him. And all of this is opened up now. Silas being able to solo lane extremely effectively, and this is what we talk about when it comes to Harrisburg Storm, right? In Season 1, nobody knew what split pushing was. No one knew what a tower was. We were just like, big team fight win, right? Like, that's just what happened, and that's what this comp's all about. But the nuances of some of the modern game really do come together when you think about what champions like Silas and Jace are able to bring to the table in terms of versatility.
Most definitely. It's a little bit outdated here, Dean. Is that what you're telling me? You telling me they got to head back to the senior citizen center?
It is a boomer composition if I've ever seen one on multiple fronts.
I can't deny it. They already called out this being a Season 1 comp. Now, UC San Diego getting some vision over towards the Sparran. I saw earlier Emps and Shorter Ace around that area trying to deny vision. Looked like Emps got the wrong memo when he pulled the Drake for a second and got Shorter Ace to get autoed a couple of times, but the fight for vision is definitely going to be big at this stage of the game. As we said earlier, it is a Nocturne. Vision denial can be huge with that. You definitely don't want to give Hugh Storm the front foot in to dictate a team fight. UCSD have been doing a fantastic job of pretty much getting the pace going their way at the mid game.
I want to give quick props also, because with San Diego, we've talked a lot about their mid jungle, a little bit about the other players. One player we haven't talked too much about has been Unless, who in this game I was really fearful for, because when you're playing into a Caitlyn Lux, it's already going to be difficult. You pick Nautilus into this, and it's like, okay, you're really asking, you're like cruising for a bruise in this game. But Unless somehow has just like controlled this river against Loop substantially over the course of this game. Every time Loop has stepped in to get vision, get some kind of control around neutral objective, Unless is there to punish him. They've generated a lot of income off the back of Unless being able to find big hooks into Loop and deny vision, be able to help Optimizer out a little bit more, help the lanes out a little bit more. Unless he's kind of an unsung hero in this game, in my opinion.
Sacrificing his life for the greater good of UCSD. Now teleport coming in from Lawrence, who shows up into the mid lane, trying to get some priority over this Drake. It's spawning within the next 50 seconds. Disrespectful. Not in the best of positionings, doesn't have flash available, but will just come off cooldown in time for this Drake. Now, priority still belongs to UCSD, as they are the ones taking out the Scuttle Crab and clearing out vision. Spell Shield to block the binding, as Lawrence starts threatening forward.
Great ultimate snag by the Silas. I don't know if it was intentional that Optimizer was able to kind of bait Lawrence into him, where like over top of the wall they didn't have vision of where he was going to be. They have no vision here.
Oh, but it only got one. It only got onto Mako. Mako trying to stay alive, but Optimizer will change that. Final Spark goes out, a good burst of damage. UCSD are not even fighting with their full squad yet, and they're running through Hugh Storm. Optimizer goes deep. Shockwave pulls him in. Light Binding will hold him down, but Loop falls. Lemon Tart takes one, gets a double, looking for more, but Emps and Lawrence just barely to escape the clutches of UCSD.
And again, wrestling away this vision game, that was played too perfectly from LTD alongside the dive from Optimizer. And the crazy part is, we keep talking about whichever team engages first is going to be looking better in a fight, and somehow it always comes up UC. It doesn't matter. Harrisburg right there. They've got a composition with a Malphite and a Lee Sin to be able to go in, and they're the ones running in a line out of the river and into the mid lane to get away from this San Diego team. This is incredible stuff, the way that this game has been able to completely shift.
Yeah, it feels like Lemon Tart is more the Malphite than Lawrence has been in this game. His unstoppable forces, his positioning, his flankings, absolutely pristine, and it starts off these fights in such good ways that gets UC San Diego dictating, that gets Hugh Storm running away on the complete retreat, unable to grab anyone from UCSD, unable to get anywhere near that backline that's poking you down with bouncing bombs and shock blasts galore. And now here comes another engaged Paranoia from Optimizer, looks to jump in. Dragon's Rage has been picked up by Lemon Tart Dreamer, doesn't get it, goes forward, jumps onto Lawrence. Lawrence gets kicked away, but it's not looking good for Shorter Ace, who has to go over the wall. Lemon Tart Dreamer will follow him through. Disrespectful's right there as well. It's going to be a kill picked up easily. The jungler down for Hugh Storm as UCSD begin to regroup, begin to rotate, begin to watch what Hugh Storm are doing.
The crux of the comp is still there if they wanted it. They don't have the Malphite ultimate for Harrisburg, but they do have the Shockwave to be able to work with if they want to be able to pinch them in. But again, the damage from the poke is starting to come through, and I think they have to leave. Oh, LTD on a deep flank off the TP. Getting a little feisty there, LTD. I don't think you've got the Malphite ultimate back. That could have been a massive play if you did. But it did force Harrisburg on a quick retreat path back up mid lane, and that secures soul point now for UCSD, who have just, time and time again now in the last 5 minutes have just been taking everything that they've needed to really push this game back into their favor.
All right, Dean. All right, fine. I'll admit it. Lemon Tart Dreamer's cracked.
He's cracked, man! I told you he's cracked!
He's been so good throughout this game. Like, the ultimate stills have been pristine. I mean, the only one he's not really getting is the Shockwave, but the Unstoppable Force is all you need.
And the thing is like the highest level of respect I can give to a player is to summarize your name the way they do in some Eastern regions. Like you talk about like, GBM is the one I talk about, Ganked by Mom, and a bunch of other players that really reduce their name. Zhao Long Bao, like XLB, being able to shorten things like that. So calling him LTD is a term of endearment to me. Otherwise, I'd just call him like Lemon, or I'd call him Dreamer or something like that. No offense to anyone I've done that for. It's not an intended like knock. But when somebody's cracked like this and they have a name, I'm shortening it to that because I want them to know that I believe that I'm going to be calling their name so so often, I have to give them a shorter nickname because I'm going to yell too many words and it's going to ruin my throat.
UCSD try to now shorten this game as they begin their sieges both in the mid lane and in the bottom lane, getting those inner towers quite easily. The amount of respect being paid by Storm, rightfully so. It now has come down to a 5k gold lead from UC San Diego, who now have deep vision in the red side jungle of Storm, can rotate this any way they see fit. I mean, Baron spawning within the next 15 seconds. This is just to keep those waves in. This is just to give them something to handle with, but here comes an engage out of Shorter Ace. Unstoppable Force was used defensively this time to find a way out, but still, Storm are not getting a kill. They're not getting that pressure too much alleviated.
A position is being held now where Harrisburg really... They just have to counter siege enough to where, like, Mikhail is going to get gold in the back pocket. Ems is in a position where the 5th item, I think, is really important as well. You've got defense, you've got some sustain in the serves, and you've got a bunch of penetration to work with as well. So to me, it's, okay, does Ems go for more defense under threat of potentially being aggressed against by the rest of CUC San Diego? Or do you go for more damage in an attempt to really get that combo off? To me, it actually speaks a fair amount to the mental that Harrisburg is in right this moment. If you decide to go for some defensive itemization as opposed to some sort of offensive itemization, if I think it's going to be a moment before we even get that. But notably across the board, just taking stock of where we're at in items, the Ziggs has caught up for the most part to Mikhail. The Caitlyn and the Ziggs are on basically ideal itemization on both sides. You've got a massively tanky optimizer who decided to go into a bunch of armor and magic resist to just be this really crazy frontline Nocturne that can dive in without going for one kill and then just getting immediately eliminated. He's a legitimate threat to just run down whoever he's ulting onto and not actually die in the process. And all of a sudden, Unks is actually into the right damage setting as well. 3.5 items. Lethality is there for the Jace. Things are looking fantastic for UC San Diego. It really does come down for Harrisburg Storm. How well can you connect the Malphite and the Orion ultimate? How quickly can you get your engagement off and make it count against this team?
We'll see if they can finally get a good engagement going on their side, but as of the moment, UC San Diego really controlling the momentum of the map. Looking at the bot lane, Axe in the bottom, just looking to get a shove in, trying to crash wave towards that tower. Will take his recall now as the Mega Inferno Bomb used just to clear the wave. Not completely looking for an engage, or are they when they take the Unstoppable Force? That might be the case now, and the recall not done from Axe. He is going to stay down there in the bottom lane, forcing Hugh's hand.
Yeah, they're going to be forced to walk at least right back up lane. If they don't wait for the chase, they know he's not actually pushing, so they're not actually under that much of a threat of losing that bottom tower. They are losing the wave, which is, again, little resources can make all the difference here for the side of HE Storm. They're the ones sitting down 6,000 gold, not something we thought we'd be saying at the beginning of the day here between these two teams. In fairness, we didn't even expect to be calling these two teams, but I'm so glad we picked up this game. Yeah, you could see the gold difference graph and just how much San Diego has been able to flip this game on its head off the back of some really heroic performances in fights from just a couple of the important members. And now everybody is showing up when the time is necessary.
40 seconds until Dragon hits the map. This would be Seoul for UC San Diego. Already being the first one to start getting priority there, they are going to burn a teleport to speed that up as they get disrespectful into the mid lane and towards the river. Optimizer just clearing out vision as Hugh Storm slowly make their way forward.
LTT still has the Malphite ultimate from when it was stolen earlier. I don't know what that timer is actually going to look like. It might actually expire, which could cause a pretty decent ripple effect when it comes to what ultimate's going to be used. If you're forced, don't tell me he's going to pull it again. I was like, there's no way he pulls the same play from the same brush. Lawrence!
Ooh, going right onto Optimizer. Is it going to be enough? Still look at Lemontar. He gets on the backline onto Makel, and Makel is just evaporated, man! It is brutal from UCSD as they go after Lawrence, they go after Ems, they go after Loop, but Optimizer, his health is too low. Lemon Tarts is not, though. Gets the double kill. Going after Loop, the dredge line brings him right back in. Only Lawrence is going to survive, but the base of Hugh Storm might not.
Walking into a game like this with a team like the UC San Diego, not a bunch of people know a bunch about the collegiate space, and especially when it comes to some of the Western teams. But this is representation for one of the teams that has looked so impressive for the majority of the year here, showing up against one of the collegiate powerhouses in HU Storm. The expectations behind Harrisburg are really high, not just in collegiate, but also in some of these amateur tournaments. They're projected to be top 2 in the group right here, right now, maybe only behind Winthrop, and even that was up for consideration. But UC San Diego, they're throwing their hat into the mix. They might have lost one early on, but they are not allowing themselves to slip that quickly into the night.
Dean, they can't keep Mako alive. The engage keeps coming in. Lemon Tart keeps focusing him down. If he dodges an unstoppable force, he's still got a paranoia on him. And then that fear tether is incredibly hard to break. Needs to get the net on top of the Gale Force and get some extra movement on top of that. There, you are going to have a spell shield that you have to time around. This is brutal for Mako, man.
Bad place to be if you're an ADC, pinched between a rock and a hard place with the ultimate
dark
Reamer
place
as well. The tart place, the caught between a rock and a tart, the great place to be. At least for casters, not necessarily for Mako. That actually brings up a pretty decent point, which is just that, again, the lack of ultimates from Lawrence that have really felt it. And more importantly, I think the lack of, I guess, synergy between any diver between from M has kind of defined this composition, which is really easy to play on paper. Is a lot when you're trying to communicate these things. They're going to get a really fast Baron ultimately come through.
Oh, they're committing. They're able to get it. It is going over to Huestorm, but there is the Paranoia going for the backline. 3 members caught out in the Baron pit and sent to the grave by Lemon Tart. But Optimizer, even though he goes down here, he's played his job. He's gotten the carries away from the Baron pit. He will chase them off. It will be a teamfight win going over to UCSD, but look at that mid lane as super minions are knocking at the door of Huestorm.
This is a really tough window that is actually capitalized on from Harrisburg. The problem is this game wasn't shortened from the side of San Diego. It took 25 minutes or so for them to get in. And in that time period, Caitlyn had collected enough gold to be a legitimate threat at any point. You combine that with everybody else that's been collecting gold as well, they know they can take a Baron. And they rush it down, they're able to force it, and they get themselves in a great position. You see San Diego, they actually looked a little scrambled right there because it's like, okay, do we play to force for the Baron? Do we play for the fight? What are we doing right here? If they commit to one real prospect, which is all 3 members in the pit going down, I think they actually could close the game with that massive wave that you talked about in the mid lane. But because they didn't, and because they instead went diving, trying to pull all 5 members or get the Baron buff knocked off, they end up only taking down Mikhail, which is, again, that's your Caitlyn, that's your Sieger without anything else, but it buys a lot of time for Harrisburg to get back in. More importantly, it buys enough time for the Elder Dragon to spawn, and again, any possibility of a Harrisburg teamfight going well for them with this big wombo combo combination is all that they need to stay relevant in a game like this.
Goodness gracious, what a strong position coming out from UCSD as they take an even stronger gold lead. 6K now, 38 minutes into this. We're headed into the late stages where we're going to find those maximum builds. We're going to see those go to completion. Lemon Tart over the wall, hops in. As you can see, that Huestorm trying to get vision in their own jungle. UC San Diego setting up towards this Baron. Shorter ace, not exactly in the best spot, but will safeguard away.
The setup is going to be here very early from UC San Diego. You know, it's a little bit harder on both sides. This mid lane is really weird because you've got Baron buff minions on one side, but you've got Siege minions on the opposite coming through from UC San Diego. I wonder if we're going to get some semblance of a fight actually between the two just for mid priority. I wouldn't be shocked to see some kind of engagement. There it is.
Going after Lemon Tart. You have everyone around him. He is locked down. He is shut down. This is big for Huestorm. They finally took away that primary engager. They're going for the siege.
They actually lost quite a bit right there because also Optimizer lost the ability to go diving into the backline. Now they've got a Caitlyn and a Baron buff. This might spell the end for UC San Diego. This would be a horrible way for this game to end. Please.
Not like this. No, they're taking the recalls, taking out the inhibitor. UC San Diego might have a fighting chance, but no, the recall will stop there, so you could get the teleport in as Emps is coming in fresh. They're looking for the finish.
Oh, they are. They've got another wave coming right behind this. Those were actually really smartly communicated from Emps and the rest of the team to be able to get another wave crash on top of the second cannon. Too many members. Lawrence completely whiffs.
Lawrence missing the unstoppable force. This could be disaster for Huestorm. Lawrence tries to walk away, but a hammer lands onto his back. It breaks the rock. Now the paranoia dives deep. Going golden to buy time. It's not going to buy enough because Loop goes down. Everyone is going down on the side of Huestorm. There's nothing Emps can do to stop this as a triple kills picked up by Emps. But this could be a game right here. There is the fear. Run as fast as you can. You can't run fast enough. It is a trophy picked up for UC San Diego.
It's very easy to be able to snag that away. And the biggest thing about this, first off, you're able to push back mid-wave. I don't know that you're going to be able to close out the game. I like this push from Onks and from Disrespectful because it gets you the bottom lane inhibitor as well, shoves out the bottom side. But I don't think this is a winning scenario yet from the side of UC San Diego. The more impactful thing that happened right here, if they can't full push in, which actually now I'm starting to think maybe they can. They've got 10 seconds left, 20 seconds left on the more important carries. Yeah, I actually think they're just going to end. I was going to say maybe they can just go back to Elder Dragon. They've got more than enough setup now, but it seems like they're just going to close. I completely missed out. I thought there was only one wave and not two waves there, but there were, and that means that San Diego avoid that tragic ending that almost spelled their doom right there with a dive underneath the tower, costing the side of Harrisburg the ability to win the game.
What just happened, Dean? What in the world just unfolded between us? We talked about it. Hugh was the heavy favorites going into this one. Even our producer was kind of shouting at us, oh, this should be a quick 2-0. No, UC San Diego heard you talking, Hyper, and they snapped back. Goodness gracious, what a comeback victory.
It was a situation. Earlier, our producer doesn't like that. It was a situation to find yourself in from the side of UC San Diego where they had to dig themselves out of a hole. And so many times you see teams will, like, if you can't keep the gold lead short, oftentimes they say, okay, if we just truncate the gold lead at 4 or 5K and then say, all right, we'll fight around an objective that we like and hope that they pray to get a very solid team fight, then they're okay with that. But this was not that game. Instead, UC San Diego said, let's just go for it, right? Like, let's try to pull kills. Let's try to equalize gold. And it worked. It worked time and time again. They didn't have responses on Harrisburg's side, on the other side of the map, because they weren't able to force anything the way that they wanted to. And that got San Diego back into a place where, you talk about this perfect team fight. You talk about the game shifting, altering team fights that can come around neutral objectives. They're not sitting down 3,000, 4,000 gold. They didn't truncate and wait for things to come their way. They actually took it into their own hands to equalize the game and won it for themselves. That's what makes me the most proud about this win. It's not a perfect win on either side, not a perfectly played game, but more importantly, they were not going to go down without a fight, and they definitely did not right there.
It was a hard-earned win, Dean. That's really what it was out of UC San Diego. Great victory for them, but this is a best of 3. We're going to take a moment to take a short break. When we return, we'll get into game number 2 of Hugh Storm versus University of California, San Diego. Welcome back, everyone, to Unified Premier League. Our matchup of the day, already spicy, Dean. Harrisburg, but taking on San Diego, University of California, San Diego. I always got to say the whole thing in one.
Of course.
Wow, that's all I could really say. I don't have much of a breakdown other than that was a banger of a comeback.
It really was. The competition, again, it's always really tough to try to portray to people just how much other teams grow. And you see San Diego as a team that, like, again, walking into this, they were clearly not favorites up against the side of Harrisburg. I don't even think necessarily after that first game that we have a bunch to work with when it comes to, okay, which team is actually, like, significantly better. Because I think Harrisburg still has a lot of things going for them. But they obviously showed the tenacity to be able to win. They showed the capability of understanding what they need to do to win. So those are both quality traits that actually make a very significant difference towards making progress against really talented teams. And so for a minimum, this could be chalked up as a win for San Diego, just on the premise that they are beating some of the top end teams inside of collegiate one way or another.
That being said, I don't think it's a shutout just yet. I don't think it's something where San Diego's going to exactly have an easy time taking this as a 2-0. I can easily see this going to a series now. The one thing is, you were talking about it during the last game. It's that some of these older champions, there is a little bit of a power creep that's come that they just can't seem to fulfill that we've had with both the Silas and the Jace.
It's I don't know. This is a really weird game because it felt like a situation where Harrisburg gave themselves tools that were super easy to use to execute on, and they couldn't do it. And then, on the opposite side, they gave themselves tools that were they were a little bit less so, but they were still straightforward. Of okay, you want to attack the other team, and then you want to dive the same way they do to you, and they did it a lot better. So it's a question of for Harrisburg, how do you bounce back? Like, what do you do here to actually play? They didn't play into their bot lane or lean into it super hard. They didn't play into Lawrence. Lawrence, for some reason, was like on a Malphite pick. I know it was a counter to the Jace, but like, I know that he's got carries in his back pocket. So I don't know why they decided to go to something so simple outside of just training, I suppose, for the communication of EMPs with the rest of the team, which didn't seem to connect at the right level. Their early game looked fine. Their early game was good. It was just, again, this weird, lengthy transition they've got into their mid game. That's a problem.
Their early game was fine. It was a strange early game, I'll say that much for the other side of San Diego, specifically their bot lane, but respect, they came back. Mm-hmm. I am hoping to definitely see something more spicy from Lawrence. The Malphite pick, you're talking about some of the carries he's played. We've seen him on the Graves. We've seen him on the Kali. We've seen him on Gwen. And we've seen him have tremendous performances on those champions. It could be working out some of the... we're working out some of the growth and trying to expand your champions pool, maybe get some tanks along there as well, but it didn't seem like the champion for him. I am curious to what he's going to grab in this game, so we can see, the Lawrence of old, man, the Lawrence we know, Dean.
I'm always accustomed to Lawrence's Gangplank. I think that's always going to be my favorite. His Renekton's also really good, though, so it's like, it doesn't really matter. He's got so many champions in the back pocket. Like, it does feel strange to just go immediately for the Malphite. That feels like something that you would pick into, like, if this were, like, semifinals in collegiate, like, playoffs, and they were playing up against, like, Maryville, and it's Niles on the other side with the Jace, that it's like, okay, now I understand the Malphite pick, right? But, like, you're in the midst of, like, AM, you're training, you're trying new things, right? Like, you're not, like, I guess maybe it's more Lawrence's style to play something aggressive against it, and so maybe that is, like, the outcome for other people. It's like, oh, maybe they're like, oh, yeah, Yasuo top lane is the counter to Jace. I'm going to play that. But now Lawrence is like, I know Yasuo top lane. I don't know the Malphite matchup. So instead, he's playing the opposite of it so that he can prepare for when the time comes. But that's just speculation at this point.
So as our teams have opted to stay on the same sides as last draft, opting for the same bans as last draft, Evelyn being the first ban over on the side of Hugh, Gwen being the first ban over on the side of UCSD. Now, where does this change? I don't think you ban away the Silas. Limitar Dreamer, it was one of those things where it's just an active counter pick, and it really abused that Malphite pick, right?
It did.
What about Optimizer on the Nocturne?
That, I think, is more worthwhile. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked to see 3 full-out bans against Optimizer just to make sure that he doesn't kind of run things, because Shorter Ace was still quiet. I don't think nearly as quiet as he needed to be, right? In a game where if Optimizer gets, like, really silent and doesn't do anything, I think Shorter Ace absolutely runs that early game and makes it look so gorgeous for the side of Harrisburg. It was just that once the level 6 got hit, Optimizer started making strikes. And so a 3-pronged approach, just being like, all right, Optimizer, you're out of the game. You're not playing anything you want. We're going to put you switch on something less active in the earlier stages, that bodes a lot better, I think, for the side of Harrisburg, because now shorter ace suddenly is the one that gets a lot of kind of preference here.
So now the final ban's coming through. Another Tryndamere ban. Nothing too different on that end. We'll see what Optimizer also has up in his well. We were talking about it earlier. He does play quite a variety. At least this year so far, he's played quite a variety of junglers, both the Eves and Zhao J4. Zach. Zig's getting banned away as well. Not going to allow Disrespectful to just slowly kind of scale up a win there.
Do we have a second lane stalling bot lane pick? Am I going to get a Heimerdinger game out of Disrespectful on the bottom side in an attempt to just stall things out? Because that was a really big crux as well, was just making sure that the side lanes weren't losing all that bad. I know Onyx kind of took the big brunt of the force from shorter ace the majority of the game, but bottom side, it had its strengths to it from Harrisburg as well. They didn't need much to really get going on the Caitlyn and the Lux combination, and so for the side of UCSD, if they're really considering what they need to kind of recalculate even after a win like that, the bottom lane is something that they're going to have to look at, because they don't want to fall down that hard to an early game Caitlyn. That is, of course, unless Zeri gets through the draft and ends up going inside of Harrisburg instead.
So Zeri getting locked in for Hugh, foregoing that Caitlyn pick that they grabbed the first time. Curious to see how this is going to play out. More specifically with Loop, if I do remember correctly, a lot more Enchanter supports you tend to see around this area to try and abuse the bottom lane. Still got picks coming out of UCSD. Let's see what the response is going to be for that one. Jinx, is the one being hovered for now, does get locked in, so I'm going to go for the hyperscaling towards that mid to late game.
The funniest thing about this, of course, is that Disrespectful and Unless, I mean, they were kind of a weak point at the beginning of the game in the previous one, and now they're playing against a weak laner in Zeri. This is a strange move from Harrisburg. Obviously, Zeri's insane, and Mikhail got a pentakill on it. So, like, I'm not adverse to the pick at all, right? Especially if you play into it. Like, if Shorter Ace decides to play to this lane, I think it makes a lot of sense. But if you leave it be, I doubt that it's going to get the same impact they did in the previous game, which means that you need to have a better top side of your map if you're not going to play into it. So my expectations in the draft are going to be either A, Shorter Ace on something aggressive again, and this time putting a lot more into the bottom side of the map, or better solo lane so that a little bit more focus can be pulled elsewhere so that the Zeri can sit there and scale up alongside Disrespectful.
So hovering the Xin Zhao, but rotates over to the Graves, and yeah, the Graves is going to be the one that's locked in, and this is a pretty flexible pick that we talked about earlier. It's not something that could just stick into the jungle. Lawrence has played it in the top lane, so not really showing too much what's up their sleeve. Going to go for the support lock-in right after, hovering the Lulu for the time being, but yes, Graves for the flex.
Bit of power in the back pocket. They're trying to consider what champions would fit really well with the Zeri. And they're going to go with really definitive counter power with here, where Luke just decides, hey, we're going to take the Leona into the Nautilus, the old school matchup that was really good a couple seasons back that a lot of people opted into, was Leona into the Nautilus pick, because from a melee, we'll kind of body it. If the Nautilus tries to get aggressive, you just slam and he can't really do anything. The brakes just have to be pulled, and it has to be a very defensive Nautilus game coming out from Disrespectful and Unless. And it's a problem to me only because, Jinx should have better wave clear than Zeri, and that means that likely Unless doesn't really have to play a super aggressive game altogether. But it still does bode at least a little bit of consideration in my brain, because now all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've got setup for Zeri. If Shorter Ace wants to find his way down, you've got really good CC and Loop to do so with.
If this Graves does go to the jungle, it is a disgusting amount of damage potential if you do get a duo roam going with the Graves and the Leona. Graves just in your face has a lot of damage that he can really bring in, but it is so exponentiated by just the passive of Leona when you're able to apply one after the other, and it can even be procced about stuff such as the smoke screen. So it is a deadly duo to see go around. If it does end up over there, again, it can be flexed around over towards that top lane as UCSD and lock in the Udyr.
They will. It's another jungler that I think it's less in the front foot, but it interacts really well with your map if you've got the right setup for it. And Nautilus is helpful for being able to help set up Udyr. And if he's able to go fast, if he's able to kind of get tanky, Optimizer's going to be able to do the job that's necessary as well. It's not the same kind of backline access and the dive potential that is held from something like a Nocturne, obviously, so it's a little harder to get into the backline. But having a point-and-click stun against the Zeri is always helpful. If you're fast enough to be able to catch her, that's going to be really useful in the later game team fight. I think that's a bit of a preposterous consideration for the Udyr to be able to catch the Zeri if she starts getting fast. But in the case that you do get on top of her just the one time, one bear slap, and she gets brought down. So that's pretty nice.
You don't even need a bear slap, just depth charge. Go follow her. Gives you enough time to run up there and okay, bear slap. Okay, yeah, you still use it, but still, I'm just saying you have options, Dean. That's all I'm saying. There's different ways to catch the Zeri.
Reasonable. Both sides baiting out a ton of mid laners too, just making sure that the pools are pinched out completely. I'm a little upset, that the Ahri gets taken off because I haven't gotten much of a chance to actually cast the Ahri altogether. But what this does open up is the potential for AD Assassin counter picks if they draft a little bit more AP in the back pocket. It would upset me a little bit to see the Jace here. Not that Unks played it badly, but again, when you think about like Zed, Kiana, Yasuo champions that could potentially rear their head for Lemon Tart Dreamer in the mid lane, those are much more exciting. And the Gragas opens it up a little bit. He's more frontline, more tank. They probably could use a little more AP damage if he is that tank variant, but if it is an AP Gragas top lane,
be a lot of pain awaiting this game as that lock-in does go through. Yeah, the Gragas get a good amount of sustain. Also a good amount of disruption in a lot of these fights. Could be a good answer for a extreme disengage if you ever need it, and when they are able to get the lockdown onto the Jinx. But the hover for the side of Hugh Storm is going to be the Olaf, which does provide a lot of power for that early game. If you do take a duel, Olaf is really good at handling a lot of those, as well as some decent neutral objective control, but only hovered for the time being. It would be one more lock-in right after for the mid lane, and just waiting for that one to see. Yeah, Syndra.
Ooh, not only do I don't love the champion's fine now, but more importantly, they give us the Olaf, but they don't give us the Soraka Olaf. Emps plays Soraka. Give us the Soraka Olaf combination between the two. It's an unfortunate situation where Harrisburg, they bait us a little bit with the potential of that coming through from Emps, but it's not going to actually come to fruition. And that is an old school counter. Thank you. Thank you. This is what we wanted. This is what I was waiting for the whole time. I wanted the Diana jungle with Optimizer because I thought that pairing was going to be disgusting to deal with, but I am okay. You throw a Gragas into it, you throw an Udyr into the comp, and that's going to be enough knockup for Lemon Tart Dreamer to be able to kind of pop off on the Yasuo, something that he plays a ridiculous amount of.
Yeah, so Yasuo getting locked in. Lots of tools that you can have, both coming from the Gragas as well as the Nautilus if you want to get that knockup, but let's face it, Lemon Tart Dreamer, you called him cracked. He's on Yasuo now. I better see something hella cracked, Dean, because you've hyped this guy up so much for me, and now this is the tempo, this is the big champion where you're looking to make the plays.
It is. You look at the opposition he's against, too. You think about, like, Lawrence can get a little beefy, the Olaf can get a little beefy, but for the most part, this is a team that is killable by the Yasuo in the right situation. All it takes is one good knockup, and this team can actually just get completely ripped through when you throw it together with, like, Gragas damage, and you throw it with the Jinx damage. It actually is a little bit of a turn on the other foot, right? Because Harrisburg was in a situation in the previous game where they were the ones with the big Wombo combo, and then, like, the big team fight ADC to be able to kind of pair with it. And now it actually goes to UCSD that are the ones with that. They've got the Gragas barrel into the Yasuo Wombo combo, or even like you said, the Nautilus being able to throw that in, and you put that together with Jinx damage, and you got this big Wombo combo. And the other side of the ones that are loving skirmish heavy stuff, that you see, Syndra Olaf really powerful as a combination. If you can hit a stun and get a bunch of burst damage, Olaf in general is just to be able to kind of be a bit of an abuser against some of these solo lanes and that kind of thing. It feels a little bit less like Harrisburg are playing really heavily towards one very specific focus, and they've gotten a little bit more kind of freeform jazzy with the composition, so to speak.
I'm just looking at that mid lane, and it reminds me of all the times I've done solo queue on Syndra and I've gone against Yasuo. I'm not exactly the best player, just gonna pat myself on the back a little bit. That's the way I do it. But the pain you feel when the wind wall blocks every single orb of the unleashed power, like, you do have to be careful with the timing. It puts another depth of thought for Emps.
It truly does. And especially after last game, there were great shockwaves, but there also were very, I think, not creative or not really inspired uses of the shockwave. And so you have to be a little bit more divisive with how you're playing out that specific cooldown, especially because you think about what this team is for Harrisburg. The range that they've got comes from Syndra, which is big. And then they also have Zeri, who's really fast and has some solid range as well. But outside of that, they've got basically they have literally two melee champions, and also they've got the Graves. Low range to pair together with those two champions means a lot more is going to be the backbacks.
So ready to hit the rift now. Match point for UCSD. After what was a hell of a comeback in that game number 1, now Hugh Storm, they've left Season 1. They're done with that. They want to grab some of these new champions. They grabbed one of the newest ones in Zeri.
Champion's insane. It's something that is a completely kind of turned tail from what it hasn't turned tail. It came out and it wasn't as weak, I think, as people thought, and it was actually a lot stronger than people thought, and it was so strong that it was getting into bad areas. And so they've been nerfing it literally since its inception. This is true of a lot of champions, but typically ADCs don't end up like that, especially ones like this where it feels like there's so much more skill expression behind a champion like Zeri. It was a little surprising that she came out as strong as she was, and people weren't able to kind of pilot her. But we've seen the kind of damage the champion is able to pilot in a lot of these fights, and it makes it very difficult. The Yasuo's wind wall is a big thing that's going to be a tool used to deny the Zeri a little bit in the course of this game. But of course, the move speed against a composition that itself is only for melee champions, right? Like the Zeri should be perfectly fine if she's got the move speed going.
Seeing the Zeri Jinx matchup, it's like, I'm you, but cooler. It's really the new age. You get excited when she's able to get those stacks up. It's kind of one of the more fun things to see if you do get one of those super drawn-out team fights.
We like that a lot.
We're just going to see both ADCs zipping around this field. That's what I want to see. That's what we have at the end of this game. 30-minute fight, both ADCs just running as fast as they can at each other's nexus.
The way that needs to happen, right, is it needs to be like Mikhail gets to load a bunch of damage into every champion, and then we need like a Renata to ult Disrespectful, and then like Disrespectful just kills everybody all at once, and then the two of them race up the map with like the 9 stack of Excited versus the fully stacked Zeri to see who wins that race.
Level 2 coming out for Loop. Tries to get it in, but that's one of the rough things right there. If you time the dredge line, you can at least interfere with that chain of CC, so nicely timed for Unless, not really suffering from that level 2, but Emps is suffering. He's forced to flash over the wall after getting ignited.
And I could see the exact moment that Leventar Dreamer was like, I'm flashing this wall. And then he's like, no, Olaf. And turned away and made sure not to go over the wall. You could see him do it. You could see the click lining up the wall for the flash. And I'm like, no, don't do it. And he read it perfectly. Because right over in the Raptor pit, Shorter Ace was sitting and waiting for the Yasuo to do exactly that. A force out onto Emps. Incredible individual performance, just burning the Ignite of his own volition. It buys so much more space for the melee champion in the mid lane. Great individual outplay from Leventar Dreamer.
Great prowess of just knowing where the enemy jungler might be on the Rift. Honestly, we've had one of the most tame series in terms of people not really overreaching so far. You know, last time we had that fight where they didn't actually go after Disrespectful, and I think it was Unless who was still left. After even straight up winning it and taking the Drake. We're seeing the same thing, just paying some respects towards each other, making sure that they don't go into the grave early.
Trying to put Graves in the grave early. It looked like Optimizer was kind of poking his nose where it did not belong on the top side. Thankfully, I believe a ward was actually able to spot out the Udyr before he was able to get into position where you could slip behind Lawrence. So Lawrence just going to walk away. And he's on the Graves this game. I know you talked about him playing that a number of times and us wanting him to be on more of a carry champion. And this game is going to have more of an opportunity to do that. It is Unks on the Gragas, and I anticipate a little bit more of an AP Gragas than a full tank Gragas, just because they need a bit of the AP damage to come through. But it's a situation where like Gragas' laning phase is kind of difficult to aggress against as even a ranged champion like Graves, just because the healing, the wave clear is going to be there pretty much the entire time. You can go for a number of different things on Unks. It's really hard to kind of push the advantage. Lawrence should be able to just sit here and CS up pretty freely though, which does open up the Graves for some later gameplay.
Yeah, and Onks does have pretty decent sustain on this Gragas, so he's not in the worst situation, but keeps taking a lot of these shots. It will draw the attention of Shorter Ace eventually. It is not the easiest thing to pull off a dive onto a Gragas, but so far so good for Lawrence. He is picking up CS lead. Nice end of the line against the turret. Gets both ends of the explosion.
Going back to the idea of range as well for both these teams, you're talking about it's just a slight advantage that's actually coming through from the side of Harrisburg. Both sides of this. Flash is available. I think he wanted the belly bot before he decided to go in, but the cooldown wasn't going to be available fast enough. Ooh, in the mid lane.
Ooh, tries to get the scatter of the weak. No stun going to be found. Lemon Tart walking away. Will be okay as he gets to the comforting arms of Optimizer.
Easy enough to be able to walk into your own Udyr. Nothing crazy right there. Neither jungler having much pressure quite yet. You can see it is still Optimizer who's clearing up to the top side of the map again and again in an attempt to help out the Gragas. Bottom side is looking like first blood. That
damage is big onto Unless. One more tick of the Ignite. He lives. Unless is still breathing. Goodness gracious. I need to see the health bar. I need to see the health bar right now, but we're not done because look at Shorter Ace. He smells blood in the water. He's going over down to this bot lane. They're shoving in the minions. The wave's crashing.
I believe
teleport coming out from
No way!
to sweep the dive. They're not going through with it. Oh my goodness, Dean. What a situation that just unfolded.
It is a decently chunked Jinx that you are just completely walking away from underneath of that tower. Harrisburg, that was one of the most passive plays I've ever seen. I can't say I completely disrespected because, again, the teleport from the Gragas could have made that a very precarious notion to actually full commit for. But goodness gracious, you've got 4 members! You don't bring 4 members to pull off or to call off a dive like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we said it's a passive game, Dean.
Yes.
It really, really is. Goodness gracious. Now, pushing the wave in the bot lane will be UC San Diego. You do see a little bit of a rotation coming out from Optimizer. They have a lot of priority towards that Drake, so transferring that straight to the Drake, Cloud Drake should be picked up by UCSD.
Kind of crazy, too, because Disrespectful was stuck under the tower and never really got a back off. So it just ends up being a superior back timer for Mikhail and Loop. We'll see if they can stick the Jinx in lane. What is happening in top lane right now?
Ring around the rosies, that's what's happening.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thankfully, I think the final reset's going to come through. The teleport to bottom lane meant that Onyx had to actually, sack a fair amount of, minions. And so Lemon Tart Dreamer, in an attempt to deny any additional code going into the pockets of the Graves, so that you can get the Hull Breaker online just as fast as possible, shifts up into top side. It's ranged into Yasuo, so it's not exactly perfect. You're just catching waves for a short amount of time. And it does mean that, of course, Lemon Tart Dreamer and Onyx both end up on a little bit of a back foot for the protection of the bottom side. And eventually, they do net the dragon from it, which is positive. But again, it's a fair amount of early gold that's been siphoned out.
Yeah, that gold just 1k ahead for Hugh Storm 7 minutes into this. It's UC San Diego who has the Drake, though, able to get the first footing onto that one. So you got to look at the wave that's being pushed here over in the bottom lane. Optimizer is clearing around that area. Curious to see if he goes for a gank or just continues clearing towards the top side where you have Anx in a world of trouble who's just been shoved in for days against his Graves.
Yeah, typically what you see in the modern day on any Gragas, let alone like AP Gragas, but typically you actually see a tier, just because it allows so much more aggressive of a trading pattern. It gives you so much more mana to work with when it comes to wave control, that kind of thing, and it builds into a couple of items. Seraph's isn't as good. I think it's like Fimbulwinter is just such a good item for Gragas for the number of ways he can proc it for the shield. That like it's always worth buying a tier, and especially when it comes to like mana control and that kind of thing. I know initially you're going AP, and so you want to get into like the Everfrost and that kind of thing. You can get on the Lost Chapter and have a bit more mana. But again, I think like the tier is still really important. I know you stack it pretty fast, so you can buy it on second item completely, and you don't need it initially. But it might have helped out Anx a little bit in the earlier laning phase.
Oh yeah, definitely. The sustain, being able to get more skills off, just get that regen, try and survive what Lawrence is bringing at you, because that bar has been multiple times that camera's gone up there.
Tough place to be if you're the Gragas, and especially now, you're living in an era where Hullbreaker exists, and Hullbreaker Graves has yet to be nerfed. So, have fun with this for one more patch, Lawrence, because it is going away sooner rather than later, but we get to see the ramifications of that decision as it unfolds further. The Graves top lane with the Hullbreaker that just kind of commands pretty much every region in just about every single matchup. Although, again, it's a silent game. We have 0 kills at about 10 minutes in. That's a caster curse, which means that we're about to get action somewhere on the map.
No, I don't believe you, Dean. I don't believe you. That tower dive, that was a kill. There was first blood that happened towards that tower dive.
There were actually 3 kills during the tower dive, right? Right? That's the timeline we're in.
Yeah, this is Schrodinger's league.
Mm-hmm.
That's gracious.
It averages
Optimizer.
to 1 kill.
He's focusing down here. He's looking for something. It's a ward. He's happy. He got it. He cashed in.
Yep.
He's going to go back to the shop and spend that 10 gold.
It is a farming jungle diff right now for Optimizer, who is up right now 19 CS. It's basically a full rotation of his camps over top of Shorter Ace, who hasn't been able to make the Olaf work all too well, unless he's actually stuck in a pretty rough situation. No level 6 though from Loop, and once he could turn and throw the ultimate, it's not going to shop. Shorter Ace does have to flash the E right there to get out of that position. But again, this bottom lane not soaking the pressure they did in the previous one. Instead, both of them kind of just scaling side by side.
Good patience out of Unless, waiting for that Zenith Blade to come out before using that flash. Will result in what keeps him alive, as we do see Shorter Ace trying to focus over towards the mid lane, get a shove going. Teleport is available for Emps. You still have 4 minutes before the plates do fall. So likely just shoving in that wave to try and get him recalled, get him back to base, be able to get that reset. Minute 20 till Infernal Drake. A fight going to break out in the bottom lane as Solar Flare goes out. To the focus is going to be on Les. Zap laps onto Loop, but Makel is getting the shots in. First blood will go over to Loop as Optimizer joins the fight, trying to get onto Makel, waiting for that bear slap. But there's the Shield of Daybreak, and there is Makel's escape. Lemon Tart forced to just watch Makel slightly get under that tower, slightly out of reach. They're not going to complete that kill.
Yeah, amazing slide right there from Makel to get out. That's a Bard tactic, too. You know that Bard is able to actually throw the portal from that alcove over to his own tower and sneak out of very precarious situations that any other champion would die in. Zeri's capable of exactly the same thing, and it's perfect understanding from Makel. Flash was burnt really early to make sure that Disrespectful couldn't put more damage in, unless was there just a little bit too quickly. If that had been turned on maybe 5 seconds later, the possibility of the ult knocking up the Zeri and Lemontar Dreamer showing up for that play with the ultimate of his own from the Yasuo might have actually turned that situation, but instead, it only took 11 minutes, Eric. The bottom side play, the dive did eventually lead to a kill. Whether or not it was actually the dive doesn't matter, because we're going to say that it did anyway.
Ooh, X. Oh no, that's not the place to be. He gets a good amount of regen, it might do the work! The minions! The minions! The minions! Oh no! The smite from Optimizer finishes off the job. That's sad situation to see unfold, but here comes the gank into the mid lane as the axe comes down, getting the slow onto Aless. No landing on the Zenith Blade, but it's not needed. It's able to isolate Unless enough to get a kill in the mid lane.
Now the Rift Herald getting dropped as well. If they can pull one more plate, they just get full mid tower off the front end of everything, which is humongous for the team. And unfortunately, I mean, actually, they're not sticking around. I was really thinking that Short Race would stick underneath the tower. They know the Jinx is bought, they know the Nautilus is dead, and they were waiting on a back from basically Angst. They hadn't timed it, apparently, so they didn't know that the Gragas was actually only just then coming out of base. Otherwise, I feel like they should have just walked underneath that tower, and if the Yasuo had anything to say about that tower going down, well, they just bring him down and let him Tart Dreamer ends up dying in the situation. But they don't care. Again, it's a relatively passive game plan coming out from HE Storm because they get themselves not only 4 plates in the mid lane, but they also snag themselves a dragon, even up that dragon count.
1-1 apiece in dragons. We are now on the Soul map, Ocean map, as the Rift transforms. Some control established by Hugh. Going to take the recall as they do get that Drake and start to clear outwards. Assuming towards the top side, you have a lot of camps over there, and a lot of bickering going on in this top side. Get the old divorced couple vibes up here. Oh, believe we might have lost Dean here.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. It's a situation. I was agreeing with you that the divorced parents we have on the top side of the map just bickering back and forth has led actually to 3 full turret plates. They call that alimony for Lawrence, unfortunately, on the top side of the map.
I can't believe you followed that one. I'm proud of you, Dean. That was pretty good.
Sometimes I get to be nonsensical, and you didn't say it at the top of this stream, so thankfully I did.
I did.
At the very top, but not for this game, so
okay.
I found a loophole, apparently.
Fair is fair. The top lane tower belongs to Lawrence as he bullies away Onks and just cleanly takes it. Continuously applying pressure here. Good thing here is Shorter Ace is still around this area, so the rest of Hugh Storm can respond if Lawrence gets attacked, and that's what we're going to see right here. Can they collapse on him fast enough? He will be able to hop over the wall, gets the flash going. Is there going to be a re-engage over the wall? Is Emps flashes over with the Unleashed Power and dismantles Lemon Tart. Oh, goodness. Scatter the Weak to grab another one. 2 kills coming out from Hugh Storm over on the top side.
And just like that, all of a sudden, it seems like what we've got is Emps in the mid lane who is able to actually force into that, and their ability to bring down the mid tower has opened up for the Syndra to start impacting the remainder of the map, and now you get the Olaf and the Syndra combination together. They first start with the Graves attack, Once again, it is both of them taking pot shots at one another. Please, Mom, Dad, I don't want to pick between the two of you. Stop it if you can at all possible. But more importantly, Emps and Shorter Ace now get to impact all parts of the map. The top lane was just the first part, but now that Emps has been broken loose, is with the Syndra and the rest of the map, you can start even going into bot lane. And all of a sudden, the Zeri, who isn't down in this laning phase, is relatively even with the Jinx. In fact, both of them sitting on about the exact same farm, all of a sudden gets all of this extra support from the mid-jungle combination.
15 minutes into this one, we're starting to see UCSD focus down towards the bottom side. Lemon Tart rotating along with Optimizer, but an instant peel-off coming in from the bot lane of Storm. They do have a lot of vision towards that river, so lane gank is really the only way to go with this, and unless is going to deliver that, out comes the last breath on to Loop, depth charge on to Makel. Loop will sacrifice himself to make sure that Makel gets out A-okay, but a good play coming out from UC San Diego.
It's the old game one strategy. When in doubt and you need gold, go attack Loop. Because he's the one on the map they found, I think, 3 or 4 times in the previous game during the midst of the mid-game. And in this one, they're going to do the exact same thing. And it's attacking preemptively. If Emps and Olaf, if the combination of him and Shorter Ace get down into the bottom lane to put Disrespectful in a hole, the game is lost from San Diego. So they just preempt this and they say, if you're going to plan to gank this with 2 members by setting up your mid lane, we're just going to jump that timer and we're going to attack before you have a chance, get plate gold into Disrespectful as fast as possible. And that means the Jinx gets the first decent advantage of the laning phase. You get the kill, you get the plates, you get pretty much everything in the back pocket. The Zeri's not down as much. He didn't do anything to affect her gold value. It's just that the Jinx has been brought up to a better place now.
Yeah, the Jinx is catching up. Gale Force completed alongside that Zeal. Pretty good spot to be. Puts a slight item advantage going over towards Disrespectful in comparison to Makel. Now the rest of Storm will start setting up around this Drake that spawns within the next 40 seconds. Probably going to try and use Lawrence to divert some attention over here to get UC San Diego to try and focus him down and just get a free Drake over on the bot side.
Oh, look at that. Divorce attorneys. They're showing up.
No. They're here. They're splitting the health bar.
They're splitting the health bar. That is a rough split. 100% for me, 0% for you, Lawrence. Sorry, bud.
Look, come on, Lawrence got the tower. You got the full tower.
Yeah, he gets the tower and the split, and the health bar, I suppose, goes to Ank. So that's kind of nice eventually. Unfortunately, Shirley on the bottom side is actually going to revenge at least a little bit more of the tower gold back into the pockets of the rest of HE Storm. This is the plan, was to get gold into Zeri. I know you just kind of defended against this topside play. You get a little bit back. Hopefully you can get this tower onto Disrespectful as well. You've got enough of kind of cover from the rest of the team to be able to do this. Because both teams now, all of a sudden, they're really in the let's get our ADC going hype train just as much as possible for the team fighting phase that likes to come about. The difference is, you have a powerful Graves and a powerful Syndra in exchange for basically not that much power elsewhere on UC.
Ooh, so fast is the man Bear Pig. Optimizer just using the blast plant with the bear stance, hops over the wall. Perfectly fine. On the bottom side of the map, it was the 3rd Drake of the game. 2nd for Storm as they're able to pick that one up. So really responding to what UC San Diego is doing here, now that the resets are coming in, it does buy them a little bit of time to get on the map and establish their own control.
At some point, I think the thing that really kind of transforms this game is whether or not UC San Diego can force a 5-on-5 where their Gragas and their Yasuo can be together. This was the difficult part of what happened with HE Storm in the previous game, where they were trying to put their Malphite and their Orianna, or even their Lee Sin and their Orianna together. But in this one, it happens to be the exact same situation, where Gragas, Yasuo, they want to be in the same fight at the same time, especially if they put Jinx into that equation. If you can get those 3 together and you can hit big ultimates, a fight looks good for San Diego, even down 3,000 gold. But unfortunately, they haven't been able to do so yet. The Dragons are the thing that really drives this. It's a question for UC San Diego of, do they want to contest on next Dragon to look for a fight to potentially get a gold spikes before the mid game, or do they want to give themselves more time to wait until the 4th Dragon and the soul point for HG Storm to really make sure that they know there's going to be a contention there?
Now HU Storm will rotate towards this Baron side. Start clearing out vision. Meanwhile, you still have Lawrence towards the bot side. Gonna have him on the split 3 minutes before the dragon does spawn, as well as Baron now available. Knockup coming from Lemon's Heart. The attention of Storm is towards this top side, is getting control over here, is going deep into the jungle of UC San Diego. Gotta be careful for UC San Diego. It is lit up, and they do have Loop there. They do have Emps there. There's a potential pick.
Easy enough, just trying to make sure that they can take away as much from UC San Diego as possible. Again, a 3K gold advantage is a 3K gold advantage for what will be the team fighting phase when you got a team like this. Now full engagement coming together.
Ooh, right onto Disrespectful, who tries to find the flash. Reckless swings, really takes away his health bar. Now the re-engage coming in as Unless missing with the hook over the wall. Got to keep a close eye on Emps, looking for that Scatter of the Weak. Spotted out by a control ward, though, so overall... success going over to shorter ace. Burns Ghost gets the flash out of Disrespectful.
Yeah, legitimate threat from what is...
Oh! From downtown, he lands it. Last breath onto Emps. Easy pickup. Optimizer runs low, though, and Lawrence is able to take advantage. He takes advantage of another one. Lawrence is cleaning house, man. He's going after Lemon Tart Dreamer, but the knockup will keep him alive. Still a triple kill going over to Lawrence.
And it's a setup where UC San Diego, they say to themselves, if we get a good Yasuo ultimate and we can pick off Emps, all of a sudden things look good for us, right? We can pull mid-tower, potentially get back a little bit more, but this time HU Storm are ready. Emps presses the Zonias, the most impactful button in the entire game, and stalls that play just long enough for the revenge. That after the Yasuo ultimate is burnt, all of a sudden it doesn't matter if you have Gragas ultimate, it doesn't matter if you have a good team fight, because Disrespectful was out of that one before it had even started. This was a play made by the remaining 4 members of San Diego, where they can't take the full 5-on-5 engagement because they lost the 2 members that really desperately needed to be there. The Yasuo ultimate and the entirety of Jinx. Since those 2 were gone before the beginning of that fight, it was chalk from the beginning.
Hugh Storm now in position with the Baron as they start rotating towards the Dragon Pit. Another minute 20 before that hits the map. It's going to be UC San Diego going deep into the jungle of Hugh Storm to try and find something on the counter. You don't have too much damage available in just Unless an Optimizer, so only a denial of resources, a setup of the map, and get the rest of UC San Diego to gather the last resources before they head over for this Dragon fight.
And they are going to try this timer. They're down about 5,000 gold, 4,500 gold, something like that. And they're into some of the item spikes that are necessary, but I feel like they would be hard-pressed to actually do this. If I were Harrisburg, I would actually really contemplate the possibility of just playing up to top lane and into mid lane to try to grab the towers and just take that massive gold advantage in exchange for the dragon. You're cool going 2 for 2. You don't need to give the possibility of a massive team fight over to San Diego when you could just pull gold off the map with your Baron buff. And that's assuming that they get the dragon, and that doesn't mean that they just lose their mid inhibitor, their top inhibitor, whatever that might be. Harrisburg seems to be taking a little bit to my advice because they're sieging up on this top tower, or this mid tower. They don't really care all that much about the dragon right now. They don't have to put a bunch of focus toward it. They're much more, kind of focused on making sure the Baron's going to do something for them.
This is so tricky right here. Attempted gauge onto Lawrence, got to hold that as Loop walks over into this direction. Collateral damage going to be used to draw some distance in. But yeah, it's so tricky for Disrespectful, who has very, very effective wave clear. Hold that. Makel over the wall, goes after Optimizer. Solar Flare onto 2, only going to get the slow, no stun to be found. Am still on the siege. Scatter the Weak on to Unless Zonks gets a snare through onto shorter ace. Close for the full engage, but UC San Diego are able to make sure they get the disengage.
Still sitting on that 5,000 gold advantage. The mid lane push should go to the side of Harrisburg right now. It looks as though Lemon Tart Dreamer actually walked up to top lane to cover that, and there's a cover from Optimizer, which is strange. They know where Lawrence is, they know where the mid lane is, they kind of understood where everyone was at for a map right there, and so because UC San Diego makes this decision, they're giving up so much. They lose the mid in-air tower. I know they were probably going to lose it anyway. They lose the dragon, basically for no contest, and the exchange is a top push for Lemon Tart Dreamer, maybe thinking that that was, if they couldn't stop either of the other 2 things from coming through, at least they're going to get a push on top side to potentially set up for the Baron buff that could be coming up in just a little bit of time here. You have about 12 seconds left on the one that's sitting on Harrisburg, and so that top side push could actually be meaningful for getting some valuable setup into the top river.
You see that UC San Diego are having a hard time finding a way to engage or even defend against some of these sieges off of Emps alone, who threatens with the Scatter of the Weak. If Disrespectful gets caught out with that, it's lights out, straight up. There's no way Disrespectful is really going to live when he unleashed power and an Olaf running 100 miles per hour runs into your face. Hugh Storm just clearing out waves, buying time. Still got a while before another neutral objective is on the map.
And really, I think the person that needs gold desperately on the side of San Diego might actually just be the Yasuo at this point. Like, you're in a place where, like, the big wombo combo team fight between him and the Gragas, I think is far more impactful than what the Jinx is going to start bringing. The Jinx is going to be able to deliver shots from pretty far out. The crit is starting to get there. Eventually, Disrespectful is going to be in the right place, right? It's this itemization that currently is stuck on by Lemon Tar Dreamer that he's been on for about 5 or 6 minutes now, something like that, with a bit of a junk drawer, trying to finish the Infinity Edge, trying to finish the Zeal item as well, just to make sure that the full crit is going to be there and he's going to be fully online. When those two items complete in tandem with one another, all of a sudden the team fight looks a lot more fleshed out, a lot more teeth to what the bite is going to look like from San Diego. But until that moment, they're going to be hard pressed to really find any kind of engagement they're going to love.
It's going to be the long stall for San Diego to get towards that moment. And I did mention earlier the wave clear is there for UC San Diego if they need to find a stall, but there's the Solar Flare, there's the engage on the Optimizer, it's Disrespectful on the sidelines, unchecked, gets a couple of rockets in. It's not enough to protect Optimizer, but Optimizer doesn't need no protection. He'll just use that bear stance and run on out.
Able to get away from that. It looked like Shorter Race might have been able to keep catching him. Obviously, I think the Ghost was popped a little bit earlier, so his wore off before Optimizer's did. And the Blue Smite actually wasn't burnt during the course of that exchange, which might have made a difference. Or if it was burnt pretty early, and that meant that it came back up in the recent time. But it's not a pick onto the Udyr. It's funny because for a moment there, it kind of looked like Optimizer saw Loop on the screen, was like, Loop, free gold, and went running after him, kind of like a bait and switch trap that came out from Harrisburg. But didn't end up leading to anything, didn't end up to a member going down. It's actually a really tanky Udyr, going with like the Malice build, coming out here with like the Dark Seal and all of the armor to come through. Really, really tanky Udyr who's able to run in and kind of make a very impactful stance against Mikhail or something like that in the right circumstance. Kind of hard to bring him down, and you could see that very tangibly with that previous play.
Now you're starting to see the stall at least work for this next Baron setup. 30 seconds before that spawns, priority goes over to UC San Diego. So they'll be the first ones to get vision there and start sweeping out any of the wards, but not really much in terms of wards. They're actually going to abuse this Fog of War, continue moving forward, potentially set up a Fnatic brush. Emp's not really going into that direction. No one else from Huestorm willing to challenge that, and you can see the missing pings coming out. You see San Diego aware where Huestorm is. Huestorm aware where San Diego is.
And now, I mean, Hue are setting up in a position where their mid lane push is actually going to be superior. They know that San Diego is kind of set up, entrenched around this Baron buff, waiting for a big fight. Which is confusing because I'm pretty sure San Diego actually saw a ward that would have spotted them out. So they now are starting to kind of realize they need to push back the mid wave. Anx comes in from the bottom side, but that means that Lawrence with this Hull Breaker actually gets to do quite a bit of work in the side wave. It's going to be a minute for Anx to actually be able to respond. So it buys a bit of time on the split push.
This is going to hurt Lawrence. He gets the tower. Makes it look easy. Anx now running away. Here comes the Solar Flare onto Optimizer. Optimizer locked down with the Shield of Daybreak. A shorter ace, and Makel will make those autos land. Take him down. No smite on the map. Huestorm going for Baron.
And how about Harrisburg punishing quite a bit of actually a misplay coming out from San Diego. San Diego sits in the jungle. They're like, okay, maybe we can bait them in. Maybe they're going to cast vision, something like that. We can find a fight. But because they've been spotted out, Harrisburg just says, okay, we're going to push mid lane and you're going to respond to it. If you don't respond to it, we're going to shove directly up to the inhibitor tower and you're going to have to fight us when in a losing situation. Or you bring everybody back immediately. You try to throw Anx into the bottom lane where a turret's already been taken. And in that transition, we find a pick, which is exactly what happens and leads to a second Baron of the game for Harrisburg, who now they're comfortably sitting at like a 7,000-8,000 gold lead between there somewhere, and they've got all the members that need gold with gold in their back pockets. This is feeling fantastic. Harrisburg, they didn't make this massive kind of arm wrestling, like bend over and just like immediate knockout against San Diego, but what they did get was a very kind of slow, methodical win in this particular sense, or at least they've been able to grind out slow, methodical.
Yeah, just slowly wearing them down, wearing out the souls. As you see San Diego getting engaged on, Ragnarok Pop jumping in, shorter ace, unless, doesn't even get a second in the fight. Now Optimizer trying to run distractions with the Bears, slap the last breath. It's actually going to be the last breath of Lemon Tar, and UC San Diego are now fleeing. Optimizer falls. Still very healthy, but Makel is on his tail and landing those autos. Loop and Emps both there. Tries to flash forward, make it a flashy play. It's not going to happen today. Disrespectful runs back into his base as you Storm dismantle UC San Diego.
And again, the biggest thing about this from the side of San Diego is this composition is built around Gragas and Yasuo fighting and being in the same place during the course of an engagement. And right there, they were not. They were trying to force something, but it was Unless and Lemon Tart Dreamer that were the ones at the front, and they weren't able to find the right target to actually pick off in the midst of everything. And due to that, San Diego just doesn't really have legs to stand on. Their Wombo doesn't come together, their everything else doesn't come together, and unfortunately, there's not enough gold in Disrespectful to outright win a team fight pretty much on his own, because Disrespectful spent most of that fight untouched, but that's because he had basically 2.5 items and not anywhere near enough damage to rip through all of Harrisburg, as they were just killing the rest of the members of the team around him.
Yeah, this is looking like the beginning of the end. Well, it's been looking like it for a little bit. It's just been a slow burn coming out from Hugh Storm. It's been, as you said, methodical, straightforward. No real objectives to be had. It seems like Hugh Storm is more focused on trying to find a way to close this map as they start putting their attention towards the bottom lane. The wave's already quite shoved in. Inhibitor is exposed. Lawrence in the mid lane will draw pressure over there. And it's rinse and repeat for Hugh Storm. This is the same playbook they've been doing over and over and over, but UC San Diego don't have an answer.
They do not. And now, with a full push into the bottom lane with a Baron buff and an Ocean Soul, it's going to be really tough to just stop the full engagement coming out here from the rest of the team. They're going to be able to siege up the Inhibitor, take that one relatively easily, and that's going to let him shift with Lawrence into the mid Inhibitor. That's 2 down in one fell swoop.
Oh, wow.
And right now, I think it's actually going to be tough to stop this full-on push. They're going to look for a fight now.
Oh, jumping in Unless. So low gets dropped. It's going to be shorter. Ace grabbing that one. May will do his best. And he will find those autos onto Optimizer. He will find them onto Onks. He will find them onto Disrespectful. Hugh Storm taking it back onto UC San Diego. They felt that last game. They updated the composition. They came to the current season, and they're taking this game number 2, sending this to a series.
It was a position right there, I think, at the very end of the game where San Diego, they were looking for anything to just latch onto, to hope for something. And I think the Yasuo ultimate slowly over the course of the game kind of lost its meaning, where it's like, okay, you can keep multiple people CC'd, you shred their armor, you do damage to multiple targets, but every time a knockup came through from Nautilus, they're not waiting for the Gragas barrel, they are just immediately burning the Yasuo ult. Whether or not that was a Lemon Tart decision or a team decision, I think was, it's not in our jurisdiction to speculate, but one way or another that wasn't being used effectively. And that wasn't the only problem, because Harrisburg, again, systematically just completely eviscerated San Diego right there. You can see how clean a team looks when Harrisburg has control of the map and when they don't have this mid-game running away from them like they did in game number 1.
And when Lawrence isn't playing Malphite, I'm just going to throw that one out there. You look fantastic on the Graves. But, hey, they're taking it to a series. They're taking it to game number 3. We're going to throw it off to a short break. When we return, we'll get into that game number 3 of Harrisburg versus UC San Diego. Welcome back to the Unified Premier League. Our matchup, it's gone to a series, University of California, San Diego versus Harrisburg University Storm. And I honestly felt like this was the expectation for game number 2, for Storm to reevaluate their draft, get something that gives them much more agency than just a five-man team fight. And it worked really well. It was methodical, it was slow, but it was a victory that they definitely earned.
It's kind of the way that Harrisburg likes to win most games, right? Like, they're not the most explosive team of all time, but they are a team that is methodical, controlling most of the time, and especially against teams that are, projected to be worse than them, especially ones that are worse in terms of CLOL and all those other types of things. It's kind of shocking to see games that don't turn out like this, which is why Game 1 was such a shocker. Game 2 was exactly akin to how we expected kind of both games to go in the first place.
So now, heading into this game 3, it's really up to UC San Diego to now figure out a response. As last time it was just, well, they kind of went interesting in the draft. Let's just steal their ults and beat the living crap out of them. This last game, completely different. UC San Diego had no response for everything that we saw from Harrisburg.
I don't know whether or not they actually need more kind of jungle interaction, because I think it's been a couple of times that Optimizer fell just kind of short of the bar in the previous game. There weren't a lot of moments where it felt like Optimizer was really like capitalizing or ganking for lanes and trying to salvage things that happened the way that the Nocturne had in game number 1. So I don't know whether it's lack of playmaking from the Udyr or what the situation might have actually been. But I'd like to see Optimizer go back into the okay, let's make plays type mindset rather than the run, stump, job, done type mindset that apparently he was stuck in the previous game. I think it was at least a lot more exciting and a lot better for being able to generate positive plays, even if it doesn't work. I'd rather see them go out trying something like that.
I mean, that's the thing about the development in leagues like this, right? It's better to overstep and learn that way than to understep and just try and constantly crawl your way back. You got to have some punishments here or there. You got to figure out where your limits are. Mm-hmm. And with that last one, what we saw from UC San Diego was a lot of attempted engages. Everyone really committed to those engages. Those are some of the silver linings that I can really see. It was something where they went for it as a team. It was just not the most optimal, to say the least.
Yeah, they definitely need some sort of optimizer to help them out in this particular situation. But both teams, I think, actually could really, really benefit from having some semblance of an early game kind of infusion one way or another. I'm glad that joke landed so well with you, Mr. Eric, because I just kind of slipped it in there, helping you might not notice.
Here's the thing, I'm a little bit late with it sometimes. Like, it kind of repeats into my mind. It was the same thing with the alimony, where it took a second. I was like, oh, God. Damn it, Dean. As we head into this draft, it was side selection for UCSD after that last defeat. They are going to opt to keep this the same way. So Harrisburg on the blue side, UCSD red.
And a second time now where the Ziggs is taken off the board, although I actually didn't mind the Jinx in the previous game for disrespectful, so I don't think that's necessarily an option that needs to be taken off. Especially because they were able to kind of stay relatively quiet. I think Unless got punished a little bit more. I'd almost like to see something different than the Nautilus in this game, because obviously the Nautilus has actually been punished in the landing phase 2 times in a row now on the bottom side of the map. So a little bit of difference there could actually go a pretty long way as well. And I'm curious what the possibility looks like for 2 powerful side lanes that have pushing power to support the middle of the map rather than the other way around. It seems like the last 2 games we've had scaling side lanes for the side of UCSD rather than anything else. And it's been Optimizer and Lemon-Tart Dreamer that have really tried to push like everything to them and try to make plays around those side lanes and that kind of thing. But I'd like to see the opposite and see how Angst, Disrespectful, Unless can play into the 2 members that clearly had a game 1 in the back pocket when they had the chance to really turn things around.
So the ban's still the same. The only thing that's still in the air is the Gwen, which is what I'm wondering. They're trying to bait that one up because last time the first pick priority, I'm trying to remember, Harrisburg onto, what's it, the Graves, right?
The Zeri was there last time at the first pick. That's why it's being banned out here. The Graves isn't a bad idea either, though, to be quite honest, the way that Lawrence played it. So if they wanted to go for that, they absolutely could go for that. Alternatively, Gwen, that's been left open, which is mildly problematic. Although without the Zeri up, they are really that concerned with having the Jinx available for that bottom side, which is That's I don't know. To me, this isn't the most inspired first pick overall from the side of Harrisburg. I know if you give it over, then like you run the risk of like if you don't have something to respond to it, you can't really do much. But to me, this isn't the greatest picks of all time, and especially if Disrespectful has like Ezreal in the pool, you could do the same thing you did in game number 1 with the Ziggs, just with a lot less weight clear.
I'm still looking at Gwen. That's all I'm staring at right now. I'm just remembering the little tangent we had from Aoki. I think it was on the Proving Ground Circuit qualifiers, where he just kept saying Gwen is immune in an angrier voice every single time he saw the replay. It was just, it was pretty hilarious. He's not going to break away from it, Dean. He's pretty happy with that Nautilus as he hovers it one more time, but it's going to be the Caitlyn going over to Disrespectful, which is going to give us a slight change of pace. No, let's switch up the hook champions. Thresh for unless.
I like this a little bit more, not only as I like it more as a takeaway from the Jinx than I like it as a pick alongside the Caitlyn, but I don't think it's a bad pick altogether. And again, it's another hook champion. This time it can play a little bit more defensively. You still have the setup for your jungler if the team come through. The problem is you gave away Gwen. Gwen is immune. Thank you very much for that one. Our production team, Smurfs, of course, with the ability to have that. I wonder how long Hyper's had that one loaded, whether he had it at the beginning of the series just ready, or if he was just like preparing it in the background.
Look, Hyper, if you're going to put that picture up, just replace her champion portrait with it. That's all we got to see. It looks the exact same on the Rift anyway.
It's true. And now I think this is another really big pick that I think is really coming to preference for a lot of bot lanes, which is rather than getting the Thresh, if the Thresh isn't an option or if the Thresh is taken away, something like that. Thank you for the attempt. I appreciate that very heavily. He really did try. It's a situation where, like, the Jinx, when you're looking for a laning partner, I think Thresh is one of the best, if not outright the best. But the Tahm Kench is something I love too, for multiple reasons. Number one, I think it's more aggressive than a Thresh in the earlier stage of the game, but the ultimate is also very applicable, not just to Jinx, but to anybody else over the course of the setup of the team. I will say they need some more CC. The front line is a little bit there for the side of the Tahm Kench, because it's a little harder to rip through him than most other supports, even without something like the Aftershock, the way that other supports might be. And this time, Optimizer is going for the very aggressive Jarvan pick. They're looking for some more action with Optimizer. I kind of like this. I wish it was a bit different of a champion. I almost wish it was like Talon to be doing this with, because I feel like that's more Optimizer's style. But hey, if the Jarvan gets out, gets a level 2 gank, who am I to complain?
I mean, it provides some very early agency just having the J4. You just said it, the level 2 gank. Flag and Drake, you get your crowd control right away. See if he can utilize that in any which way. Does have a great support to really go roaming around with if they do want to find picks. But yeah, first phase of the draft done so far. Akshan bound away, as well as Poppy, as we do have our first half of the team set up.
We do. Both top lanes actually receiving a little bit of attention, which is the first time over the course of this series that we've seen that happen. I wonder if a Camille blind is coming from the side. The Poppy kind of is indicative of that. I'd be curious to see if both teams continue to lean into that or whether they pinch the mid lane pool. The Ahri not wanting that to be blinded by Emps, making sure that that's not going to come through. I think it makes a lot of sense. The Rise being taken away so they don't double down into the top lane bans. I have to assume Onx is going to get the pick here for the side of UCSD. And I wonder what safety is here for Onx. Oh, actually, that's a little more interesting because there's a bit of flexibility to it.
We got some spiciness, can flex it around over in the mid lane and in the top lane. Leaves the last pick to come in. Could relatively, I mean, I'm trying to think of what mid laners are still up. Victor is one that comes to mind right away that is still available on the board. It's waiting for the. Oh my god, you're still trying, Hyper. You're still trying.
Close enough. Close enough. For shorter ace. Erase is now, I guess, the name of the jungler here. You get some hands on the Lee Sin. This time they don't have to pick it that early inside of the draft, and instead is just going to be on another champion that has quite a bit of action. The Jarvan does have quite a bit of CC. There it is! See, that's fine. It's not perfectly cropped, but that's okay. We get the intention. Gwen is immune. That's what we like to see. That is the champion portrait that everybody wants. So, yeah, Harrisburg have set themselves up. They just need a powerful mid laner. I wouldn't have been shocked with the Syndra pick just outright for the side of Ems. Instead goes for LeBlanc. They've got a lot of single target damage between the Lee Sin and LeBlanc to work with, and they've got a bunch of AoE from the rest of their team. But they're lacking a little bit of CC, I'd say. I guess they've got Tahm Kench for a little bit of supplementation. They got the Dragon's Rage Cage, who are both two good tools. But again, I would have preferred something like Syndra or something with a bit more CC on an AP champion in the mid lane, even though I don't mind LeBlanc's single target into a composition with like a Caitlyn and a Kali, that kind of thing.
So LeBlanc and Liu Sin opening up the skirmish for Harrisburg University, but the response out of UCSD, round it out with an Aurelia. So interesting. You could really flex this either way. You could really pick your litter of the lane matchup you want to go.
Absolutely can. In this particular sense, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Akali end up in the mid lane up against the likes of the LeBlanc. On the alternative, obviously, like the AD mid laners for Lamentar Dreamer tend to be the preference, so I have to imagine that it's going to be more preferential for him to have the Aurelia in his back pocket. Throw that together with like the Akali, I think is harder to capitalize on if you are the Gwen than anything else, and I think that ultimately ends up getting you in a right place. And it seems like that's actually what they've gone for here, if this is the correct lineup, because we're waiting to see if that's confirmed or not. But it seems like Lamentar Dreamer has decided on the Aurelia in the mid lane matchup against the Aurelia or against the LeBlanc, and I think that's actually preferential. I think that's the correct place to put these champions.
I think there's a lot of preference for that. You could tell how much how quick they were to grab both the Lee Sin and LeBlanc after seeing the Akali locked in. Lee Sin and LeBlanc both work really well into the Akali. You do have a skill shot with the Ethereal Chains, Resonating Strike, Cripple Tempest. There we go. I'm flipping the words, going dyslexic there. But yeah, you can totally see why they wanted to do the flip there, why they wanted to put the Aurelia into the mid lane and keep Onks over toward that top side. But now we have the draft pretty much rounded out here, and what I see most of all is a lot of potential for skirmishing.
Yeah, I think if Harrisburg wants to play out an earlier mid game where they look for advantage, that could be the play because they've got the Lee Sin LeBlanc for a ton of single targets. But you do run the risk, of course, of like Aurelia shutting that out with the W. You've got Jarvan to attack lanes. And I actually think it's really hard for Harrisburg to play out just one-on-one, two-on-two laning states the way that they really want to in this one. And especially into a Jarvan who's going to be able to push some of the pacing in the earlier phases. I don't know that this actually bodes super well for them. The later game team fights, obviously, you've got Jinx and you've got Gwen. You've got some amazing potential for what you're able to do then. But by that time, I mean, if Aurelia's on the right gold, if Onks is on the right gold in terms of the Akali, those champions can just get erased off the face of the map. If Caitlyn gets going early, you just play for towers and you just get a bunch of gold into the single target Caitlyn, and then you got divers that are trying to get on top of her. She just hits you with one auto and you die. I really don't mind what UCSD has done here. I think Harrisburg lacks some tools. They still have the potential to play, but I'm favoring UCSD's composition on paper.
I really do enjoy the snowball potential that you have from Harrisburg. Lee Sin, LeBlanc, I've already talked about that, but when you get to the late game, Jinx technically does snowball when she gets excited, and you're able to get kill after kill. So those tools could work. It's just the setup that we're talking about, Dean. They need some way to get into that position to be able to have that agency that we're talking about towards the mid game and deal with the comp of UCSD. But it is the final game here of the night. Gone to a series 1-1 each, winner take all, and already a little bit of shenanigans coming out. I mean, you got a hook champion. Why not just try and bait out a little bit of cheese?
This is good. Whether or not they actually get it. It is a shallow word coming through from Loop. They see the flag go down, and they're able to actually know that what's coming. If they were paying attention to it, obviously. If they weren't paying attention to it, then it doesn't matter. But here they understand that the information likely was given over to the side of Harrisburg, and so they're not going to push for anything more. And Loop is not going to get caught out at the very beginning of this game either. So back and forth a little bit between the two teams. The attempt, I actually don't mind either from the side of UCSD. These teams have been so back and forth when it comes to the early game, when it comes to the mid game, that any amount of advantage that you can grasp over top of your opposition in this one is just going to be such a boon.
And any amount of fighting, really. You're talking about the early games. Man, they play passive. That game 2 was so passive. No one really willing to take a risk. I think these are high-risk champions. I think this is where that stops. I think this is the bloodshed game.
Ooh. Little bit of action between Lawrence and Onks. Onks was just able to hit the 5-point strike with the auto attack. Got a little bit more into Lawrence than you'd want. Both of them rocking the Ignite and the Teleport as well, which is a fun little lane setup. And it is also an Ignite for Lamentar Dreamer, who for the first time actually has a melee champion that I think can legitimately full threaten a full-on kill against Emps, with just proper play and with things like that. Yasuo usually shouldn't be solo killing his Syndra outside of a really bad wave management coming through from Emps, but this is a situation where the Aurelia really can find the plays into LeBlanc if you have a forcing move in your back pocket.
It's a tight match to play. Got to dodge around a lot for both of these champions, and a lot of tools to dodge. As both junglers making their way through their camps, skipping golems will be optimizer, pathing towards the bottom side. Complete opposite for shorter ace, going for the full clear. We'll finish towards that top side, and taking a look at priority, it is going the way of Hugh Storm, both in the mid lane and in the top lane, so has a little bit of options if he chooses to potentially set up anything for a gank as he starts up his blue buff.
Interestingly, obviously another camp will get brought, but this wave is pushed so far from UC San Diego, it's likely going to bounce off the tower and come back out for what is the next wave that comes through. So in about 11 seconds, something like that, the wave is likely going to get not in 11 seconds, but soon enough here, the wave is going to get neutralized potentially after the next one and push back out to middle, and that might be the option for Optimizer to go for a play. However, Lee Sin has actually jumped immediately up to top side.
Yeah, shorter ace coming in, going right after Onks. Onks in a world of hurt, gets caught out by 3. Nice on the turret aggro juggle, but first blood going over to Hugh Storm.
And only the level 2 had actually been accomplished. If the there, that never happens. You cannot kill the Akali underneath the tower without the Shroud, or with the Shroud up. Because they're able to punish it very quickly, it was a nice use of the minions that have been stacked onto the bottom side. This doesn't happen here for UC San Diego. It's much harder to force that into 2 members rather than just the 1 member, especially the ones that Tom Kench. And not wanting to burn that one, instead Optimizer's just going to steal away the Krugs and walk away hopefully happy. He might be able to get a bit of a residual gank if, again, the wave bounces back into the middle somehow, but that is yet to actually occur.
Ooh, almost getting the chains. Auto trades going on between Emps and Limitard. But take a look at Optimizer, trying to set up something down in this bottom lane. They've been pushing this wave for days, constantly crashing it into the tower. Already able to pick up a turret plate on top of it. But too deep underneath, too safe they are. Just happy grabbing the gold, grabbing the pressure, take the recall.
They will. Both teams, I mean, obviously the one play that has come about on top side led to an immediate kill and an advantage for Lawrence. But again, it seems to be shaping up to be a little bit of a quiet earlier game as well. Because again, the 1v1s might be exciting in the individual moments, like this right here, Onks between Lawrence. But the trades shouldn't ever lead to a full-on engagement, because again, there's not a bunch of hard CC to work with. Lawrence looking for more, but Optimizer's here now.
Flag and drag, gonna miss. Lawrence doesn't have flash, though. He is still completely caught out here. Gets a good chunk of damage on the Optimizer, but it just looks good. That looked great from Onks. He's able to pick up the back end of it.
It's so tragic because like Optimizer really could have just been granted that kill. And obviously you don't want to give like the Jarvan, like the earlier game champion, a bunch of gold, but giving it over to your late opponent, equalizing your own kills, and also still like having other problems. It feels worse for Lawrence, I think, giving that to Onks than it does actually feel giving it to Optimizer, because it's a question of whether or not Jarvan gains anything from the gold, but Onks definitely gets a lot from the gold.
Loop's so hard punished right there. That combo is nasty. You get caught by the death sentence. They put down the trap. Loop is just standing there for a hot minute, waiting to become some kind of cooked catfish. I don't know what you make with catfish, Dean. I need an update. I need to go to New Orleans. I need to figure out what kind of dishes catfish can be made into. Yeah.
Okay, see.
Is catfish not a Louisiana thing? Did I mess up hard here?
I think catfish is just a fish. I don't think it's wrong to say that it's purely from It's wrong to say purely from Louisiana, but our producer's whispering in our ear, being from Alabama. He's taken offense to saying that Louisiana is like the go-to place for catfish. But
okay, you don't find catfish in California, Dean, at all.
I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, you're not wrong at all. You took a shot at a southern state, and that was a pretty decent guess in my opinion. But apparently, our Alabama compatriot thinks otherwise.
Alabama and Georgia. Can you update me on what type of dishes they make, Hyper? It's a fish, he says. It's the main dish. He's not a chef. My bad. I asked the wrong person. He's a producer. He's a producer. Sorry.
It's funny because he's listing off dishes, and it sounds kind of like the scene from Forrest Gump where he's talking about shrimp and all the things you can make with shrimp, just with catfish. So, not a knock on him by any standard whatsoever. Just funny that this is the occurrence, especially since so much has happened on our screen in the meantime. But yeah, like you said, the potential for the roasted catfish comes about when you're able to kind of layer the CC in the earlier game. A bit weaker, not as able to kind of tank all the damage that comes through.
I love how much
he's still molding, man.
How much this detracted. He's a frog. This is why we make him a frog. It's easier when he's a frog. I hate this catfish Tom stuff. Unbench the Kench and load the Toad. All the works. Whole copy pasta into Twitch chat. Thank you.
Oh, we love that. We love that all day. In the meantime, everything that has gone down on screen seems to be pretty much like delegated to exactly one thing, which is that the Dragon went over to UC San Diego. So there is that. They've got that in the back pocket. Lanes are even in most states. I guess top lane's got about a see a handful of minions here, and it's a little bit of a freeze coming through from Enks, so maybe that gets equalized a little bit. But so far, despite the fact that we have a Jarvan and a Lee Sin in this game, no real early action to speak of outside of the couple of top lane plays we've seen.
Mostly a lot of farming out of Shorter Ace. Optimizer now around the Rift Herald pit, only taking the Scuttle. Slight rotation out of Ems, gets caught out. Optimizer spots him, but no stun over the wall from Lemon Tart. Good effort, though. We found that. It would have been a good way to at least try and get the flash out of Ems.
Yeah, if he jumps over with the attempt of running back to his tower and kind of gets lazy with the positioning of that distortion, he actually might go down, or at least force out the second distortion or the flash, something along those lines, to continue to punish the LeBlanc after the play. But right there, I think it was Emps who was actually putting some thought into where he was putting the distortion, because he didn't just like haphazardly go over the wall directly into the Aurelia stun and cost himself anything more. The Rift Herald is on the board, which is why we see both supports kind of roaming up here. Caitlyn and Jinx are on the way as well. Caitlyn actually has the fast track because the river is controlled by UC San Diego, so they're able to walk directly up here and accomplish that. And the mid push is there as well, so it seems like San Diego is going to have the reinforcements necessary, as Shorter Ace and Lawrence are on it already alongside Luke, but everybody's coming in.
That tongue damage pretty brutal for Unless. Going for the engage. Here comes the Abyssal Voyage. Gets the knock up onto Lemon Tart. Emps looking to jump in. He can do a lot of damage with this distortion, but he goes after Unless instead of the party. The damage comes in, and now Onks looking to fight with this. Akali tries to hop over the wall after Luke, who flashes. Lemon Tart fighting for his life against Shorter Ace. Gets destroyed by Imps as a Sonic Wave onto Onks is going to finish off the job. A double kill going out to Makel. Rift Herald belonging to Hugh.
Where did Caitlyn go this entire time? Caitlyn was faster than Jinx and just turned back down to the bottom side of the battle. I was like, how did this go so poorly? How did San Diego lose this fight so badly? They had more members here. They could have pushed them off. And instead, again, I guess the decision here is you get guaranteed tower plates into a member that desperately needs the gold, right? Like you're comfortable with the amount that Disrespectful gets for this, because it trades off. If you get 2 turret plates, 3 turret plates into your Caitlyn, the trade-off is, of course, the Rift Herald, which at best or at worst gives you like 2 turret plates. You can't get a full tower out of it, but it only really nets you those 2 plates. So it's like, okay, you can get that trade-off. But the fight's there. Like, why fight then? Like, why not just give the Rift Herald? I don't understand the call.
Full commitment into a disadvantaged situation is going to result in Q-Storm just outright picking up Herald. No problem for them. UC San Diego are going to try and use this moment to recollect themselves, and it's a minute till Drake, so this is the time to do it. You know, you are getting that reset off on Disrespectful. Unable to get his first item yet, so if a fight does come out, which I'm not 100% sure if it does seem like UC San Diego are getting a lot of control towards this area, then it should be rather scrappy between both of these squads. More deep vision coming in from UC San Diego.
Putting some vision along the bottom side, I think, in an attempt to, again, start to break out the Caitlyn, who is the member that I think should be absorbing a fair amount of this. The mid lane isn't looking phenomenal. The 2 kills in that last fight going to LeBlanc is not helpful. This is the mid-jungle combination between the two. W's going to deny a good amount of damage.
Not enough. Not enough.
Not even close. Not even close.
Smooth Dragon's Rage. Follow up from Emps. Works perfectly. Now mid laner gone. You get some free time with these plates, but more importantly, you got priority on that Drake.
Yes, the question is bottom lane in a worse play? Yeah, I think at first start. That's a really fast play. Yeah, San Diego, they were on top of things. They were setting up the bottom side, and so when HU Storm steps into the mid lane and they're like, all right, we're going to take mid lane, it's like, they're like, all right, like, fine, we'll trade. Okay, you can have mid tower, you're going to get gold back in your pocket, you're going to put it into LeBlanc and lease into 2 single target members, probably the worst ones to have for team fighting, and the exchange is, you lose a bit of gold on the Jinx, you put a bit of gold in the pockets of the Caitlyn, and he gets second dragon. San Diego, I'm feeling great about the call they just made. I know they're down 1,000 gold, but man, I actually really love the call.
Yeah, I was completely fooled there. I thought Hugh were going to at least put the Rift Herald down to just go grab Drake right after, but San Diego didn't see Optimizer down in that bottom lane. They all work together. They grab that brick and get it before Hugh Storm can get it. Now it's going to be Hugh Storm rotating towards this top side. You got a recall on Makel, so don't take a fight just yet unless they can get an assassination. Got to be careful there, as you still have Unless, and he can still get you with that death sentence as he is getting loop with the chain of CC. Lemon Tart grabs that kill.
Yeah, LTD actually having a pretty good kill right there alongside the rest of his team, and the setup is now for the potential of the mid lane. They've got 4 minions. Unfortunately, Mikhail's here, so he's going to throw a little bit of the cog into the system, or a wrench into the cog of the system that's coming through from UC, so they don't even get a plate or anything like that. But they can continue to assert dominance with this 4-man squad. The Jarvan is here, the Caitlyn is here with a decent amount of gold. The Aurelia is still powerful, even though the Blade of the Ruin King isn't quite done. Feeling good about the position that they're in. Again, they're tied in gold right now. There hasn't really been that much between the two teams. It's just been the towers traded, a couple of kills traded, the dragons traded back and forth. And it's, we're approaching 15 minutes. We're approaching mid-game with another tie between these two teams. What an exciting match we've had this evening as a replacement to the replacement match for what we've been able to put on. No one would have thought this would have gone to 3 games. No one would have thought this would be this interesting.
Oh, but interesting it is, and hurt is what Lemon Tart is feeling. Shorter Ace, wow, showing up at the last part of that fight. Emps pretty much had it well handled, but Shorter Ace just to guarantee that extra nudge. Now they'll get some free time with that bottom lane, but it's 45 seconds before plates do fall, so likely only able to collect one more. The clone comes out, gets flag and dragged, unless taking the wrong path towards that tower. Found by Shorter Ace, who takes him down, and Emps, still alive, will slip away from Optimizer.
Yeah, easy enough here. Again, the biggest problem for the side of San Diego is that your 2 single target damage members on HE Storm between Shorter Ace and Emps, they're pretty fed, which means that in one-on-ones, 2-on-2 situations, those two will scrap like no other. It's really difficult to take the fight against those 2 champions when they're in tandem with each other, especially if you land a Dragon's Rage kick, you have the ultimate coming through from LeBlanc. There's so much more damage that gets thrown into that equation, and Lawrence... alongside the Ignite, I don't think it's going to be enough.
Oh, he's got to chase him down. He doesn't have the ult anymore, so Onks is going to get away. Lawrence, so close, but you just can't see. Can't fight.
Yeah, and no Ignite burn from Onks right there, although the TP was just burned, so that might be free time for Lawrence in the top lane. Optimizer heading up there. I think you need to skip camps to go make sure that Lawrence doesn't just crash every wave, and you'll pull multiple... Actually, plates are gone, so you're not as worried about that, but probably... okay, yeah, Lawrence instead is just going to crash the wave, so you're just going to sit there and you're going to take your camps. You're not that worried about that situation. Instead, the one-on-one, again, it's back and forth between the two. The Akali's still getting some of the worst end of that, but that wasn't that dangerous. I know the Ignite kind of made it look dangerous, but fortunately for Lawrence, or unfortunately for Lawrence, that Summoner spell is down. Now Lemon Tart wants him Riven.
Wow, Emps really patient there. Doesn't use the back end of the distortion. Is he gonna live? Lemon Tart. The clone comes in. Emps is alive. He actually gets away with it. Oh, he played Lemon Tart with that one. The mind games on that stun.
On one hand, I want to be like, wow, that was insane from Emps, right? Like, that was really cool being able to sneak out of a situation like that. On the other hand, Lemon Tart Dreamer did that without hitting a spell. He missed his E and his ultimate and still almost killed the Aurelia. Or the little boy. How is that allowed? That is not okay.
Oh no, they're gonna punish poor Lemon Tart. Kick against the wall, Dragon's Rage. Emps rejoins.
No, not an assist though, unfortunately. Instead, both of them, they continue to just run into the Aurelia, constantly making sure to try to punish Lemon Tart Dreamer here for picking the champion that everybody dislikes. It's just, it's a painful place to be because they're just continuing to mine gold off of the Aurelia time and time again on these 2 champions. They're going to have such a massive influence over some of the mid game. Now, the exchange for this is the other side of the map is fine, right? You're pushing with Onks. You're able to actually get a gold advantage or a CS advantage for the first time for the Akali, as well as the Rift Herald going into the pockets of Optimizer is some of the gold reprieve that you're looking for. You have Disrespectful still in a great place inside of this game as well, so you're okay with where you're at for San Diego. They've just been able to really put a lot of damage in 11 Tart.
So 1.5k is the difference between these two teams. Hugh Storm having the advantage. Looks like that's about to change as Shelly hits the Rift and is looking to crash in over on this top wave. 5 seconds until Cloud Drake is going to join them on the Rift, but the attention is towards Lawrence on this top side. Optimizer kind of realizing that now, just going to walk away. There's no potential for a dive, but the rest of Hugh Storm are closing in on Drake.
Charge to come through, not able to knock down the tower, but it does put enough pressure that if Alex is able to push a Lawrence out of this lane, that's almost certainly a dead turret coming through, or if Optimizer decides to put any additional pressure up there, that could be the place as well. Harrisburg, they scrap, they're able to grab themselves a dragon to kind of slow down some of the stacking mechanics of San Diego, as they already had 2 dragons in their back pocket from what they had done in the early stage of the game. It's a Cloud Soul, and again, To me, the best champion in the game with this is actually the Gwen. The move speed is nice. The cooldown reduction is actually it's just move speed. But poor Lemon Tart.
Oh, they just keep running into Aurelia. You said it, Dean. Please.
Yeah. Listen, as much as I want to feel bad, I don't. The champion is not okay. Like I don't like Aurelia at all. I want her to go back to her old self when she had like the E stun, which is like an auto cancel. I loved that Aurelia, and the modern one just feels like it's just out of place or way too broken in every single meta. So I'm okay with this. At least the bullying that's occurring. It's not Lemon Tart's fault. I'm not okay with them bullying Lemon Tart. I'm just okay with them bullying the Aurelia.
Yeah, but it's Lemon Tart by proxy. You can't just get away with that one. Poor Lemon Tart, 2-5-0 in this game as we approach the 18th minute point. Drake will be quite a while, so we're looking at Baron. It's 2 minutes before that's on the map. Setting up towards the bottom side is Hugh Storm.
I don't know which person that's doing the observing right there just did that hard to Mikhail, but we're not going to mention what just happened. I fear that somebody missed that, and they're like, what happened with Mikhail? Nothing. Nothing happened with Mikhail. There was no problems with the red buff whatsoever. Nothing that brings back the kiting from double if that caused him to die against the red buff.
Oh god, it's gonna be cursed if we get a replay on that. Emps now setting up something towards his top side, but Optimizer is here, waiting to get the knock-up. Flag Interact, double distortion comes out. Shorter Ace will try and save him. There is the Dragon's Rage kick, but no! Ace in the hole, blocked by a loop, devoured by a loop. He's out! Will escape! He will survive! Same can't be said for UC San Diego. Disrespectful gets disrespected by Makel. Makel gets dropped by Onks in the process. Shorter Ace goes after Unless, takes him down. Lawrence on the hunt for Onks, but Onks will use the Blast Plant to get to safety. That's 4 of his members down off of Engager. Hugh Storm, go deep.
That's a tough one. Ooh, Onks? Not done yet. Ignite is actually down onto Lawrence.
Just over the wall, Shorter Ace. Lawrence is gonna survive. Oh.
That's not even a Gwen is immune moment. We're overusing the meme. That was a situation where it wasn't enough. It's a place right here where the LeBlanc's actually dodging everything. Emps has been unkillable this game in so many ways, and in the most tangible of ways, literally against the Aurelia, where the Aurelia has twice in a row auto-attacked the champion, basically down to 0 health, and not been able to tag either of the CC moves necessary in order to continue the play afterwards, which is the tough part of this matchup. You combine that now with everybody from the side of San Diego piling in to try to kill Emps at some point, and it led to a massive punish across the board. The minimum is Onks was able to pull a couple of kills. The Akali is starting to look very fearsome, but that's an advantage for HE Storm akin to what they had the previous game at this mark.
I can't get over it, Dean, because this keeps happening. Those specific plays with that last denial of the kill, it's like what we saw with Emps in the bot lane and Shorter Ace showing up. They just keep doing this where they get someone, whether it's Emps, whether it's Shorter Ace, just appear over a wall out of nowhere and completely ruin UC San Diego's chances.
It actually reminds me of what happened to Loop in the first game. This is how the advantage was grown back for San Diego, by punishing the support of HU Storm. This time it's unfortunately somebody else who takes the brunt of it. You see the problem with this play right now. That's not Lemon Tart Creamer, that's Onks. So they're not going to be able to make it work.
Yep. Simple Shroud. Yep. Sonic Wave misses. Well, goodbye. Nice try.
Tough. Not in Aurelia. I don't support that one. Sorry. It's not going to happen.
Oh, come on.
It's, again, I love the way that they're actually using these two, though, because, again, for late-game teamfighting, Gwen and Jinx are already in a good enough place on their own to pretty much do what they need to do in a teamfight. You throw your ultimate all the way through, Lawrence can, duel pretty well in the front line of a fight against either Optimizer or even Lemon Tart, either one of the two. And, I mean, honestly, the Jinx can actually carry the damage as long as people are standing in front of her. So the important part about Emps and Shorter Ace is just kind of putting oppressive play into the rest of the team.
Ooh, Loop doing it again. Emps caught out, but the Devour, that's what it's used for. It can deny so much when you're able to lock someone down.
Do you know how hard it is to kill this team? I'm starting to think about this. Think about it. Gwen is immune, right? And she's got a dash. You have Dragon's Rage kick, and you've got dash for Lee Sin. You've got 2 dashes on LeBlanc, and you've got Tom Kench. And her passive, yeah. It's so hard to kill Harrisburg right now. That's got to be the most frustrating thing about this game here for San Diego.
And then Emps can do that.
Oh, yeah, and then Emps can do that and chunk out Optimizer.
Oh, and now looking for the engage will be UC San Diego. Flag and Drake from Optimizer gets close towards the Drake, comes in with the Cataclysm, gets kicked away and destroyed. 2 down so far, 1-for-1 trade as Lemon Tart goes deep onto Mako. Mako gets dropped by Onks in the process, but you're fed to the Wolves right after because that's a double kill going to Onks, but you can't get anything else. Abyssal Voyage trying to get the knockup, can't find it. Onks taking the long way out, but he has found Lawrence, and Lawrence with the scissors gonna snip away at that hairdo, gonna take that ponytail right off of Kali. Even though you're invisible, it does buy time, but there's no one really there to give you backup because even your support is getting hunted down by Shorter Ace.
Goodness gracious, a number of situations here that turn out so well for Harrisburg. They get the dragon. The fight didn't look horrible either. I loved the way that Lemon Tart Dreamer was actually able to put pressure on 2 of the members that were making up the team fight so well. The problem is there's 4 threats on this team, right? Like, it's not just 1-2 members that you're terrified of. All the gold is focused into Mikhail. Bringing him down was valuable, but it's not that valuable when there are 7 kills on a Lee Sin, 4 kills on a LeBlanc, and multiple kills into a Gwen as well before a fight even starts. And because of that, all of them need to go down over the course of everything. So while Lemon Tart did quite a bit of work in the midst of the Dragon Pit, Optimizer did quite a bit, being able to trap a couple of members in with the Cataclysm, they just don't have like the kind of back-end damage necessary to play a true front-to-back yet because they're behind this much, right? Even if the ADCs are on the same itemization, everybody else on the side of Harrisburg is so strong that you really can't even focus down the opposing ADC and hope to win.
Yeah, you got our first carry. What about our second? What about our third? What about our sixth? They got all the tools that they need at this stage of the game, 23 minutes into it, holding a strong lead of about 5K thus far. Setting up the play will be UC San Diego, unless looking to find the death sentence on the Emps, just barely missing on the back end. Optimizer walking into a bush that he really does need to avoid. Gets the knock-up onto Loop, which will stop the Abyssal Voyage, but teleport coming in. 5 strong will be UC San Diego, but there's the Dragon's Rage. Gets the knock-up. Shorter Ace with the safeguard right out. Optimizer getting dropped by Mako. Mako left unchecked and now disrespectful. The whole bot lane of UC San Diego completely on the run, but they cannot run fast enough. A zap is going to put the slow and guarantee the kills, guarantee the ace for Hugh Storm.
Things we never really got in the course of this series, Eric, were like pure kind of 5-on-5s where both groups are running into each other slowly. We had a bunch of interactions between champions all at once. We've had a lot of diving, and we've had a lot of slow, methodical play. We never really got this pure 5-on-5 battling. That's popping up, and Harrisburg is good at that. Surprisingly, the late game team is good at 5-on-5 fighting, so I don't blame San Diego for being like, okay, maybe we could take this. We've got tools for it, right? But they are well past the mark in this game where they're able to rely on their champions alone. The gold is not there. They're not able to make those plays happen, and that's not what they were comfortable with in game number 1. They weren't winning in a 5-on-5. They were diving and making things happen into the opposition against Harrisburg Storm, and it's just, that's the place that they find themselves. They've now found themselves in a place where the gold isn't there for any of their major carries to win out a 5-on-5, and Harrisburg is comfortable in either that situation or one where you want a solo lane. Why? Their single target damage is insane. Emps is insane. Lawrence is insane. You don't have a winning lane to work with.
You have nowhere to really play off for UC San Diego. It's just an attempted stall game, but even then, long haul, this is brutal to get through. Everyone is online, as you said, Dean. Setting up towards the mid end, Optimizer, unless you have no carries with you. I don't think you want to be on this side of the rift, but the foot in the mouth of Unless is going to guarantee that he jumps right back into the river, and Mako guns him down. There's the distortion. There are the ethereal chains, but Optimizer with the flag and drag tries to buy some time, but the super mega death rocket finds him.
Yeah, it's just hunting now from the side of Harrisburg Storm. It's too easy for them to wrap up a game like this. They're up 10,000. Actually, they're up 11,000 gold at this point. There are only 2 dragons in their back pocket, so they can't quite get to the Elder win condition. The Baron buff's going to be useful. They should have the gold to be able to force this, but unless a pure 5-on-5 is kind of enforced upon UC San Diego, they probably can't wrap up the game on the back of this, but still, it should be a nice slow burn to the end of this game if nothing else happens to accelerate it. But one way or another, Harrisburg's going to be taking this. It was San Diego with a really solid fight at the beginning. They looked really good in game number 1, but they couldn't quite recapture the magic of what happened with all of that dive that they had in game number 1 as well.
On the siege, Harrisburg destroying the bot lane inhibitor tower. Now opened up is the inhibitor. Get a zap on the back end of Lemon Tart Dreamer, who falls to half health. It's going to guarantee that this inhibitor goes down. Bot lane inhibitor falling. We're now seeing shades of that game number 2 where they rotate from the bot straight for the mid and take that inhibitor as well with this Baron empowered siege. But there is a flay. Now the box comes out, unless getting low. Emps picking his target carefully, throws out the ethereal change, but sidesteps the flag and drag as Lawrence gets 1 kill. Jumping in is Optimizer, but he's trapped in jail with Harrisburg, who are taking him down. Now Onks dives deep onto the backline. Emps just easily slips away with the distortion, caught out with the super mega death rocket. And goodness gracious, dude, I mean, Hugh started off with a sprinkle in that game number 1, but they know full well that Californians can't drive in the rain. From a sprinkle to a storm, Harrisburg take this series.
Yeah, easy enough here, man. I talked about how the slow burn can end up encapsulating it. It might take a little bit of time, but unfortunately, somebody fed the fire a gasoline soak log, and that's everything that needed to happen. It was a 5-on-5 that goes disastrously in the base. I could talk a lot about Harrisburg and what they were able to accomplish. I want to talk about San Diego for a second, because again, they've beaten what is effectively a top 2 seed in the West, and they've also taken a game off of what is a top 2 seed in the East. They're an impressive collegiate squad, and they've showed up very, very significantly inside of a couple of games. And I think if they can continue this pace and learn against teams like this, they're going to be amazing. They're going to have plenty of star power when the time comes. But Harrisburg being able to have the resilience to be able to kind of scrap out a game like game number 2, to be able to scrap out a game like game number 3, where they're just like in complete command of everything, it looks fantastic for a team like this. It's mental resilience. They're able to come back from quite a bit in the back burner, and they understand a variety of compositions. I think that's beautiful.
I mean, that's it right there. I said somewhere at the start of the day that this is about development, right? You take your losses, you take your wins, you do the best you can to get as far as you can, and with all the cancels that we've had with these games, this was a performance from both teams. This is showing teams that are striving to try and get towards the top of that ladder, to try and be in the best of the group. Even with UCSD going up someone as reputable as Harrisburg when it comes to the esports collegiate scene.
Yeah, and Harrisburg gets to take a victory like this where oftentimes it's really crazy because you see games that are really scrappy against teams that are considered worse than you, or teams that aren't as developed, don't have the players that you do. And this is a perfect example where, like, on paper, anyone would look at this and be like, okay, this is a Harrisburg stomp. And it was 2-1, and it wasn't exactly like a stomping 2-1 where it was like, okay, they slipped up in the early minutes of the first game, and then they just pounded out 2 games in a row that were amazing. There were moments in games 2 and 3 that looked okay for San Diego, and game 1 was a wrestle where, like, San Diego just beat them, right? These are fantastic learning opportunities for Harrisburg. You don't get these often. When you're playing against top-level teams, you get to filter for a lot of that stuff, but you miss some of the scrappy stuff that some of these other teams bring out, some of these other tactics that teams that are really good that can beat you in the early rounds of, like, what are Eastern playoffs, collegiate playoffs, whatever that situation might be. So both teams got so much from a series like this. Harrisburg, you know that they're loving to go to the drawing block and be able to kind of fix things out for this.
Oh goodness! No! Never put that up once again. Please. Oh God! It's
Why
terrible.
did you make it red? She's blue.
Anyway, phenomenal performance coming out from both of these squads and what they were able to bring today. But that is going to do it here for the casting desk. Any closing words, Dean?
No, I think it was a fantastic week of games. The UPL is chugging along slowly. This Group A actually has become very interesting because, again, a performance like that from San Diego, to me, implies that they could beat just about anybody at any time. So I'm really interested to see how it wraps up. It would also be sad to see them fall, but they are, of course, now behind some of the middle-of-the-pack teams at a 1-2 record compared to anything else. So we'll have to see them climb, get back into a place where they feel comfortable. And obviously, Harrisburg, I'm waiting for the Winthrop game. I think that's what everyone's waiting for. This is the point where, like, Winthrop game is next on the docket for them. That's the one that's really important, and we'll have to see what both teams are capable of bringing to the table.
All right, so we want to thank you guys for joining us for the casting desk. My name is Eric Desirux Patran, of course. Always lovely casting with you. Dean Rebel Fox Merrick, the no nonsense. He's a little nonsensical today. We had a fun cast, that is for sure. But of course, a shout out to our producer, Hyper10 Scion. This is what I'm going to call him right now. He can't run away from that one. And we'll see you next time here on the Unified Premier League.